I'd like to call the governing board meeting for the Liberty Elementary School District to order today, November 13th at Jerry Rovey District Complex. We have all 5 board members present, including Board Member Parks, Board Members Aguirre, Bixler, Kenyon, and myself, Michael Todd. We did the Pledge of Allegiance in our work session, so we will skip that now. We'll go to 3.2, which is approve the regular agenda.
Mr. President, I recommend that we approve the regular agenda consistent with board policy BEDB and temporarily suspend governing board policy with which this agenda may be inconsistent.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks?
Aye.
Board Member Aguirre?
Yes.
Board Member Bixler?
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We will show that approved. 5 yes, 0 no. Next will be item 3.3, governing board and superintendent recognitions. Dr. Monroe.
So, President Todd and members of the board, I think we can start off with the recognition from Freedom Elementary School. So I will pass it back to you, President Todd, if you want to read the intro, and then we can invite Mrs. Reynolds up and we can do our recognitions.
That'll be great. We'll ask the board to come up front after we read this, but just it's very important here as our district moves forward to recognize both the great staff and the students that we have in our district. And if you look around, you see many great people. I'm sure there's a future president of the United States. In our student population, doctors, lawyers, truck drivers, we cover the gamut. But tonight, we're recognizing our staff over at Freedom. So on behalf of Dr. Monroe and the governing board members and myself, the Liberty Elementary School District is proud to be building a community and culture that motivates, develops, and recognizes staff and individuals in our community who perform outstanding work for our students. We want to reward excellent performance and achievement and show appreciation not only towards our staff who have achieved a goal, performed well, or exhibited a behavior that is worth awarding, but also acknowledge our amazing parents and volunteers who are valued in their daily contributions to our school and inside the classroom. Truly, they have a positive impact in the lives of our students. Some have a positive impact on our teachers too, as they're helping them with copy work and all sorts of other things that the parents do. These are individuals who make our vision a reality, and they are here tonight to be recognized for their dedication to liberty and our students. I'll ask the board to step forward, and when we call your name, if you'd please make your way up so we may recognize you, and we'll have a group photo afterwards. Also, I'd like the principal or assistant principal to join us from Freedom. Do we have it somewhere? Okay, first on our list tonight, we're recognizing our teacher, Tracy Giles. Every campus takes pride in giving me a couple names that tricked me up. I hope I get this one right. Our on-site staff representative for tonight, Tiana Jones. Our district support staff representative, Leo Cuellar. Our parent representative, Susie Mercado. And our volunteer recognition, Erica Mardries. So two things. One, if we could get one more round of applause for the best of the best at Freedom. And then I will ask all of you to come up here by the board so we can get one big group photo. And no rabbit ears behind me. That's why I go to the back. Dr. Monroe, please proceed.
President Todd and Governing Board, we just had a study session where Mrs. Camp was able to talk to us about letter grades and go over kind of our school letter grades for this year. So I would like to recognize all of our Liberty schools for their hard work in achieving their letter grades. There's a lot to celebrate. However, we certainly have a lot of very focused work to do for our students in the days to come. So as we talked about a few minutes ago, I'm proud to report to the board that the Liberty Elementary School District has received a B letter grade from the Arizona Department of Education. Very proud of that. We're certainly not content and settled until we can really get that A and make sure we're making a maximum impact on the lives of our students. We know our students are stellar, our teachers are fantastic, and the leaders are second to none. So our goal and our expectation is we strive to be A schools as well as the Liberty Elementary School District as rated by the Arizona Department of Education. That's the goal. However, tonight there's 3 schools I'd like to recognize specifically for their letter grades. First, let me speak to Liberty Elementary School. Liberty Elementary School. Liberty Elementary School grew from a C to a B from one year to the next. We're proud of their growth, and more importantly, we're proud of their trajectory under the leadership of Mrs. Murray and the wonderful Liberty teaching and support staff over there. I'd like to congratulate them, and we're looking forward to even an A letter grade in the future. So one more round of applause for Liberty. So along the back wall of our board room here, we have principals, staff members, teachers from both Estrella Mountain Elementary School and Las Brisas. I'm very proud to say that both of these schools were recognized by the Arizona Department of Education as A schools. Let's give them a round of applause. Let me briefly speak to each school, and then we're going to ask the staff and the principal to come up and get a picture with a banner we'd like to present to the school. We purchased multiple banners, one to put on the outside of their school and also one to put on the inside so they can shout from the rooftops that they're doing great things for kids, and we want them to continue to do so. So just as the board is aware from the last little while, Estrella Mountain had the very difficult task of remaining an A. So not only building up there, but achieving a level of excellence under the formula and being able to maintain that. And as you saw, the emphasis on growth, that is a very particular challenge under this new formula. So hats off to them for maintaining that A, to Mrs. Boris, the staff, the parents. There's a formula up there that they are following, and it's showing a lot of success. Las Brisas Academy, they were a B letter grade, and they basically went up to be an A. So, which congratulations to Mrs. Schaefer, her leadership, the staff, the hardworking staff and teachers. the parents, the community. It truly takes a village. So congratulations to Las Brisas as well. So let's give them one more round of applause, Las Brisas and Estrella Mountain. So Mrs. Boris, if you want to come up with your staff, we'll give you, we're going to ask the board to come up. We'll have the banner and we'll take a picture, a very proud picture with your staff. How does it look? Does the banner look okay?
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Go to the school and see us. Good job, team. We are a team. Way to go.
Las Brisas, come on up. If you're here with Las Brisas, Mrs. Schaefer.
Next year we will, yeah. Come in. Right here with
All right, everyone look over here, big smiles. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's get the kids in. Straight up. Points over here?
Yes.
Recognitions, right? That's all. Oh, yeah. No, but that's it for recognitions on that one. Ryan? That's the next one, 4.1.
What's that? Hey,
He had something written out. Is that
what's
it?
that binder?
All right, we'll move on to item 4.1, the attendance, enrollment, and ESSER update from Dr. Court Monroe.
Yeah, President Todd and members of the board. Attached is the enrollment and the attendance updates for October for the board's review. I'd also like to offer a brief update to the board on ESSER and ESSER funds. I know some of those things have been included in board updates. ESSER funds are the one-time COVID funds that were issued during the pandemic. The last of these funds expire September 2024. This last month in October, we had a letter hand-delivered by our building principals to 21 of our employees, reminding them that their current position was funded out of these ESSER monies that are expiring early next year. Reason we did this was to communicate appropriately, reassure them of their importance and liberty, and our intention to communicate and work with them through this process. These funded positions are permanent guest teachers, behavior specialists, and some of the reading interventionist positions at each site. Starting next month, we'll begin the budget process, as the board is aware. This process entails input from various parties to identify priorities to the budget for the upcoming year. These ESSER-funded positions, they're important to us. They're close to about $500,000, and they'll be part of the upcoming budget process and conversations. This process also includes the governing board. There's many considerations to the budgeting process for our maintenance and operation. That includes employee raises, potential adjustment increases to the salary schedule that may come from our salary study, or potentially additional positions that could be included in the future M&O budgets or even funded by the grants, including these positions. With a slight decrease in enrollment this year, the current loss of the bond this last week, which I'll update the board on in just a little bit, there's a lot of moving parts to the process, and these ESSER positions will be considered through the process. We value all our employees. We value all the work that is being done by these current employees, and we look forward to working with each one of them to make sure that they have employment in that position or however things play out in the budget process. So the intent of the letter was not to alarm, but certainly inform and remind people when you're in a grant-funded position that grants start and end. And I will also tell the board that we're also looking into other types of grants that could fund these positions because they're important to us as well. So if the board has any questions about that update or comments, I'm open to hearing those, but I wanted to provide an update that happened here in October.
Board members, any comments, questions? Dr. Monroe, I would just like to reiterate that too. We've heard nothing but great things about our reading interventionists that are currently ESSER funded, but I would assure that that's a high priority for me, and I can't speak for everyone else, but I know for me that's a very high priority moving forward. I would encourage everyone part of the budget process to recognize their value and know that we need those folks. That's going to be the difference in bringing some schools up. So thank you for your time. Okay, we move to 4.2 administrative reports, presentation of the Transportation Center by DLR and FCI. Mr. Bob Young.
Mr. President, members of the board, we have David Schmidt with DLR, Anthony Haberkamp, and Michael Kubelback with FCI to give a progress report on the Transportation Center. You guys come on.
All right. Good evening, members of the board. Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is David Schmidt. I am an architect with DLR Group. I'm joined by Mr. Michael Kubelback and Anthony Haberkamp from FCI. The point of today's discussion was to update you on the present design of the transportation facility. So I'm going to go through a little of that and kind of give you an update of where we've come. You've seen a little bit of that before. We've gone through the master plan, and then specifically today, what are the components that we are planning to push forward in design to be built with the 2019 funds from the bond. And so that's really the point of today's is to look at specifically that component of it. So to step back for just a moment, and I should follow up, and then the end of the presentation, our partners at FCI will go through some of the budget and how we arrived at the numbers of what this is proposed, estimated to cost. So next slide. So to take a little step back, just to remind you all, we're talking about the facility across the street, the properties that the district owns and is currently utilizing. In addition to that, the district has purchased 10.5 acres, that area in yellow you see there, which will be combined with those into one big site. And so the first component of this was to really look at how do we develop holistically that whole about 13 acres into a district operations facility over the course of several years and probably future bond cycles as well. And so next. So what does that look like? Really major planning concepts here, looking at the district administrative building on the south. It really wants to be a facility with which has an outward face to it, so it presents itself to the public, and so it was placed along MC 85. That also then allows the operations component, the other teal bubble to the north up, to kind of be separate and kind of have, it could sit back and allows the buses to have their own circulation route and not have to turn out onto MC 85. Really splitting those two with parking allows the parking lot to be super efficient. Allows those things to flex between loads in the morning for bus drivers and things like things like this board meeting tonight, where we get to use those parking lot for both components. Very efficient. And then separate the bus parking to the north. And so if you go to the next slide, looking at circulation routes, those two concepts never actually coincide. And so it's a very safe circulation. And you'll look at the two stars to the north, the blue ones now are dedicated specifically to buses only in and out. And then the ones to the south and the one off of MC 85 specific to cars. And so it really starting the process from looking at site development from a very safe and vehicular circulation concept that's very safe. So next. So building that out completely, as we mentioned, the future bond or future funding source of some sort, an administration building to supplement what we have here, right on MC 85 with its own parking. Then the buildings in the middle, we talked about a transportation component. There'll probably be other things there as well to replace holistic district operations, which include building maintenance and other things as well. And then bus parking, obviously, to the north. And so what does that look like specifically today? Next. So phase one is looking at developing that entire north portion of the site minus the buildings. And the reason for doing that is setting ourselves up for to really build things as efficiently as possible. And so a few things that have changed since last time. Looking at the cost of the irrigation canal, which we're relocating, which was part of our land purchase agreement. Those costs, of which we don't control because they go to the irrigation district, came in much higher than expected. Really rebuilding the fuel facility itself and doing it right. And then looking at, with FCI, our partners, looking at the different components and what they were costing, the buildings themselves getting fairly tight and compact, mobilizing those people to build those buildings. We weren't getting what we felt was bang for our buck from the construction dollars. And so stepping back a little bit, looking at how do we set ourselves up for a very efficient construction process in the future that would be all buildings, but this time really setting ourselves up with the site. And so what this would entail would be correcting the not irrigation, the drainage and issues along Liberty School Road, collecting that water, which currently drains into the site to the north, building a retention basin for that, piping it across the street and building a retention basin for that, building bus parking with heavy-duty asphalt that'll stand up to the ongoing use of the buses themselves. Building, setting ourselves up with a septic field for the buildings, putting in utilities for the buildings, electrical, domestic water, fire water, sewer, building the building pads themselves, building security for the buses themselves to avoid vandalism and other things that cost the district money in the future through a secure fence system, and then building access to all of those components themselves. Mr. Aguirre?
I was wondering, could you refresh my memory? When you talk about the irrigation ditch, you talk about additional costs and it came in significantly higher, and you're talking about the irrigation district. What ditch does the district itself own?
There's currently a ditch that runs along MC 85, I think from just the southwest corner of the church along the property that the district purchased. And then it runs directly behind the current facility that the district owns, the bus barn, for 1,300 feet to the north, up to the alignment of Fremont, where it turns west and continues along that dirt road to the west of there.
So, correct. And are you saying that ditch goes under 85?
I believe, I am not positive, I believe that it's piped under 85.
So it would just continue to be piped from the tailwater ditch here on the north side that way.
I have to admit, I'm not up to speed on exactly what the design is, but basically we're relocating, the main component of it is relocating the ditch from behind our current facility to the property line, to just off of our property line to the west of the new property we've bought, which would be really in the middle of what's currently the field.
So, and I understand that,
Okay.
right? What I'm saying is there's no need for us to put a ditch in. It was always my understanding that we're gonna put a pipeline in because that's what goes under 85 anyways, and that distribution ditch isn't gonna be used for us. Now, I know that we have to make that distribution whole so that on the south side of 85 that those folks can get their water, but there's no need for it to be a ditch. It can be a pipeline.
I could be mistaken. We have the design from the proposed design from the engineering company that works for the irrigation district, and I'm sure that Mr. Young and I could go through that with you in more detail. The fact is that it is costing us about $540,000, and that's to some extent a non-negotiable. We agreed to that in the we agreed to do it in the purchase agreement for the land. We did not, I think, at the time understand what that would cost, the extent of the cost.
Because it's my understanding what we said is that we were going to have to rework that distribution line. Now, I understand that currently right now that it is a ditch, and the reason it's a ditch is because the folks who own that property used to irrigate from east to west. So it was a distribution ditch. Okay?
Okay.
So now the folks that own that property are not only us, but the current farmers, they irrigate from north to south. So the only thing that there doesn't need to be a ditch that runs north and south.
So it may be a pipe. Well, okay.
And so a pipe is
Regardless,
$540,000?
It's the cost to replace the ditch with a pipe then.
Well, there is no ditch. It's just a pipeline.
It's still,
A concrete, because is that what?
it's currently a concrete line V ditch, and it's being replaced by a pipe.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
And what size is that pipe? For $500,000.
Appears to be 24 inches.
Straight from Buckeye Water Conservation and Drainage District.
A 24-inch distribution line. Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think we need to go ahead and look at that a little bit closer. I'm not saying that we haven't looked at it, but I think we need to get some more people involved here. Because I'm not disputing the fact that we did agree We agreed to make them whole, make the irrigation district whole, which I 100% agree with that. But what I'm wondering is, number one, where's the numbers coming from? And are the numbers actually correct?
Mr. President, members of the board, we're currently working with the irrigation district. There were some changes to the plan. We're trying to, originally, when this was designed, it was moving a gas line along 85. And now we're thinking we don't have to move the gas line. We can run across where there's an existing cut through of that, put a stand box in, and then run it over and connect to the new pipe. So they are revising that. We are re-looking at those numbers right now.
Okay, I just want to make, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris, I apologize. It looks like
No, I don't want to take your time, but just
If I could,
go for
really
it.
quick, Board Member Aguirre did have the floor.
Yep.
Let's let him finish and then you can move forward.
Yeah, I'm just really concerned that we're getting ready to tunnel under a road where we don't need to tunnel under a road. That there's already a distribution pipe there, right? And that we should be matching the size of that current distribution pipe. And I don't believe that it's 24 inch.
Mr. President, members of the board, you're correct. And that's why the architect firm or engineering firm that is working with the irrigation district, they are looking at the size and the routing of it so that we can eliminate some of these costs and hopefully bring the costs down.
Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, I've been in the business for 27 years and I try and simplify everything. As I like to say, I like to dumb it down. So if you have a pipe that's currently going under the road, and that's been there for years and years and years, and that the folks on the other side of 85 aren't complaining about the inches of water that they're able to get through there, wouldn't we just size the new pipe to that same pipe and run that pipe north?
That's what we're looking at right now. The engineers are studying that to put the standpipe on our side of 85 and just run from that with the same size pipe to distribute it.
Mr. Haverkamp noted that we're not actually replacing the pipe under the road.
No, right.
That we're placing everything this side, on the north side of MC 85.
Right, but you said that they came in that we needed a 24-inch pipe.
Instead of the ditch, they want to pipe it across the field. Instead of an open ditch, it'll be a pipe running to the north.
Understood. But wouldn't the size of that pipe need to be the same size of the pipe that's currently under the road?
Yes, and that's what the engineers are looking at right now.
Okay, so I'll stop. I apologize.
I'm Board Member Aguirre. I think these are things we can further investigate and look into and make sure we have some clarity before we move forward on that, certainly.
Board Member Kenyon, did you have a comment?
If I could just make a comment, I agree with Board Member Aguirre. I've dealt with the irrigation district for a while as well. They did recently, from my understanding, change to where whenever they're putting a pipe in the ground, they actually subcontract it, and that increased the price dramatically, and that just happened within the last year, I believe. But we do need to look at that. I mean, that price is ridiculous, and just kind of looking at what we can do. I mean, it's not that big of a stretch, you know. If there's other options, if the irrigation district will let us look for a third party or whatever, it's just worth looking at and coming back to the table. Thank you.
I don't disagree. Thank you for your comments.
Continue on, please.
So let's see. Can we get the next slide? Again, so looking at just vehicular circulation and what that would look like within the component that we are doing under this phase. So the gray area to the south is an undeveloped component of our site. We're looking at that with our engineering consultant, civil engineering consultant, and with the city right now to discuss what state we leave that in that would be advantageous to us to develop it in the future and make sure we don't need to import dirt, need to export soil, et cetera. And so we're looking at that. but basically developing the north component of the site at this point in time. Next slide. As I mentioned, this is just outlining that we are going to look at the site only, developing the site only, lighting, paving, and those components, building pads, bringing in utilities, and we're not going to build a building at this time. Mr. Haverkamp is actually did some cost estimating right now, and we're aligning that. It's currently showing is slightly, we believe, slightly under budget. We've been working with Ms. Strickler to look at exactly what the district funds available to us are. And I'm going to let him.
Yep. So you can go to the next slide. So the last slide here is the overall cost estimate that we are currently projecting out, and you can see we've isolated it from the fueling island, the wash bay, the site itself, and then adjacent ways, bringing on the entrances into the project to bring the overall total cost. We are showing, just because we had the entire project budget allocated originally to the job, below the line there you can see what we have allocated directly from Buckeye Water Conservation District for the canal, based on their engineer and their cost. Outside of our costs, so we're not marking up any of that. That's just going to go directly with the district like you would do with any other utility project. So we're tracking that cost separately below the line that you can see on the bottom right. But we got multiple budgets from multiple trade contractors based on the preliminary cost of the project and preliminary design in place based on the sizing of the fueling facility that's needed to replace the fueling pumps that are failing currently. And adequately paving the entire site. I mean, right now, this phase 1 is roughly 8 acres, just over 8 acres of site. Of that site, over 5 acres of it's going to be fully asphalt paved, 4-inch thick, 2 layers, 2 lifts of asphalt. So it'll be very heavy duty. It'll last long for the buses that are going to be driving throughout that site. So this, as David was saying, will be a site that'll be fully developed, ready to go for the next phases as they get developed.
Questions?
Last question, and I apologize, I forgot to ask. The church, are we going to be helping them with parking too? Like when where the proposed new district building would be, that's going to be paved, right? For the time being? I think it was back one slide.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was a cup. Yeah, it is. So the gray area, that's going to be paved out right away, right?
No, the dark gray to the south,
Yes.
that's not in this phase. So we have minimal parking, vehicular parking, just what we need. But I don't see an issue with, for example, I mean, that would be up to the district to decide if we have an agreement with them that they park there on Sunday mornings.
Right.
And you bring up a really good point. Maybe we should look at pedestrian access to the church from our parking lot if that was something the district was looking at.
And that's what I was getting at, is I just wanted to be cognizant with our neighbors there.
Yes.
If there was a way that they might be able to park, right, and then they wouldn't have to cross the road no more with the little ones and stuff, and they would just have an access maybe in. I didn't know if that was possible.
It is. And Member Aguirre, to answer your question, I actually have built a really good relationship with Pastor Claire and the congregation over there. And Beth and I actually met with them so we can communicate throughout the whole project. And those things are being considered. We want to be really good neighbors. We want to help them out as much as possible. Their primary concern is they're an older, smaller congregation. So as it's under construction, they would just want to make sure that there's appropriate signage and people to get to the church. But yeah, we want to be good neighbors. We want to do right by them. And like I said, I've met with Pastor Claire probably 3 or 4 times so that we have these conversations. They've been able to see some of the drawings we've showed them because we want to make sure that we have a minimal impact, and they know that it's going to be in phases. So we would be really good neighbors and help them out. They're not too concerned about crossing the road because when they have services, there's not many people around. Their big concern is the age of their population. And so we've just committed to being really good neighbors and communicating with them throughout the process and helping them out as much as possible. We don't want to.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yes,
absolutely.
Absolutely. They've been great neighbors. They help out Liberty Elementary quite quite a bit. They did campaigning for our bond, which I was really appreciative of. So yes.
Thank you for that, you guys. Appreciate
If
it.
we are under budget on this, and we're eventually going to develop that future scope area, is there an opportunity to maybe develop a small part of that, which would help them? Because I think this road with construction and so forth, crossing the road, there may be more debris than normal. And I think they have been very good partners to this district for a very long time. And I'm not proposing we're doing something extra for them. We're going to eventually use this, and we'll have a shared use agreement. We've always let them use our parking. So is that something we could look at?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we could look at. In these estimates, we carry a design and estimating contingency as well as a construction contingency. So as the design's wrapped up here in the next couple months, if we're feeling good, we're going to be bidding this out competitively to qualified trade contractors. And so any additional cost savings, we could even show that as a potential ad alternate is the lingo that we call in the construction industry, and show that and be able to incorporate that if we have enough budget available.
And I think President Todd and board member Aguirre, that's exactly kind of where my head is that's what good neighbors do, and we look for those savings to try and benefit them, and we're nurturing that relationship. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful idea.
Thank you. Any other questions, board members? Okay, thank you, guys. Our next topic is 4.3, Special Education Presentation by Ms. Kay Hamrick, our Executive Director of Special Services. She's bringing support.
Good evening, President Todd and governing board members. I'm here today to give you a presentation on special services, and I have with me Stephanie Church, who is my special ed coordinator, and Tara Cook, who's my preschool coordinator.
It's okay.
And preschool falls under special services, so just want to let you know. Okay, so we're going to celebrate, everybody celebrates, we're going to celebrate our students and our staff, because our students and our staff are why we're here, to support them and their parents. So we're going to go ahead and start it off with this wonderful video that we are so proud of.
Days of the week, and Saturday is okay to bark like a dog. Saturday is okay to snort like a hog. Sunday is the one day to chill like your chinchilla, ape like a gorilla, dance in the antilla. It's always such a thriller. Days of the week.
Todd, I'm thinking 30 years. Is it 2023?
2023. It's 2023.
Yeah.
Genesis, is it fall? Yes or no? Yes.
Oh, good girl.
Yes. It's fall.
Yay.
Fall. It's almost winter.
Are you excited? No? Happy? Are you happy?
You want me to help you?
Happy.
Which one? Are you happy? Are you happy? Fine. That.
Happy that. Happy that. Happy that.
Happy that?
Happy.
Happy? Happy? Okay, happy. No, we're not scared. We're gonna look for the letter W. What sound does the letter W make? Whoa. Very good. Down. Let's write. Hands up. Let's write W. Down. Up. Down. And up. Very good. That's how we write W. Now, put on your binoculars. Put on your binoculars. Look for the letter W.
Do you want taco or pizza?
Yes! Do you want to eat tacos or pizza? You connected two sentences together and use or. Good job!
Tickety tickety bumblebee. Can you say this name for me? Whose name is this? Good reading. Sebastian, this is your name. Okay, put up your clappers. Okay, Sebastian.
Okay, so that's a little bit, a few of our staff and our kids. If you noticed on the first couple videos, there were some older kids there. So what we've incorporated is that the Rainbow 7th and 8th graders, they have a service that they can choose, and they're working with students. So it's making a huge difference. So looking at what our goals, we're going to continue to provide quality education, the educational continuum of services for our students. And we'll talk a little bit more later in the presentation about those continuum of services. The professional development, we're going to continue to do professional development for compliance as well as for best strategies or best practices. We're going to continue creating that inclusive environment for preschool and building that preschool because our numbers are growing. And we're really excited about that. At your study session, you talked a little bit about inclusion. We would like a lot more students from the community to come into our preschools so we can actually put those students with special needs in those classrooms so that they can have those typical peer models. We also want to continue to recruit and retain. We want our own employees. We want to be able to provide them with everything that they need as a district, not as a contract agency. So we're going to continue to recruit and retain, of course. And to create a cohesive partnership with our parents. We'll talk a little bit about that at the very end, that we are starting a forum for parents in special education to give them some tools and to give them some communication and knowledge. Okay. So this is our current staffing for special ed teachers, and you can see when you look at Liberty, it's heavy, and that's because of the preschool. So we have one self-contained and the preschool, and I'll show you that on the next slide. But those are our SPED numbers of teachers that we currently have, and preschool as well. Looking at our percentages, so let's talk a little bit about percentages. Arizona is 15.95 in special education. We are 16%. So 15.95% is the state average. We are at 16, so we're right there. Once we start getting over that 16%, then they start looking at us and saying, why are you over-identifying students for special education? We are okay now. But looking at, you can see Blue Horizon and Las Brisas, they're below the state average. They do not have self-contains. So as you start looking at Liberty, it's 32%. Well, we have one self-contained and we have a whole preschool. So we have most of the special ed students at Liberty are preschool. So, and when you look at Rainbow Valley is over because they have 5 self-contains. Westar is right where it should be, and they have 2 self-contained. So you can take a look at the percentages, and we're pretty evenly spread out, looking at population and the percentage of students with special needs.
Can I just ask one quick question while you're talking about the percentages? Liberty is also our smallest population school. Is that correct? So when we see that number, it's somewhat artificial that it's 32% because it's starting from a much smaller base than the other school.
Well, and remember, it is the smallest school, so they have more room. So they had more room to put those preschools.
Right.
So currently, we have the 2 developmental and 2, which is special ed, and 2 regular inclusion preschools. And I'm telling you, we're growing. We're going to need to add some more. So.
Right. Yeah. It's just I didn't want anybody to freak out by that number. Just understand that there are some components to the math that make it a little different than really what's
heavier.
up there.
But if we took the preschool out, then we would be closer to the percentage. Way closer.
Okay, I have one question. You brought something up the other night about trying to equally spread the students across a number of schools. Can you explain how that works and what your intention is?
In the past, when I first got here, we looked at, I was I was unsure why certain self-contained classrooms only had 5 kids and others across the district had 16. And it could be by area, and I think that's what it was, by area, but that is not equitable. So we look at now making it, equalizing it. So for example, if Freedom has 15 students and West Star only has 8, the next student that comes in will go to West Star no matter what, because I can't have a small number and then an over amount of number in our self-contained classroom. So I try to make it equitable. And right now we are very equitable. We're right there at the limit though, but we're equitable.
Are the percentages, that you're currently showing, are they including gifted program?
No, it's not including gifted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so in this slide, it basically talks more about how the special ed students are divided into their census code or level of service. So we have a student count, let's say Blue Horizon, their level of service for students with a census code A, which is there within the gen ed population, 80% or more of the day, is 102 and 92% of the students with that census code are in that placement. Okay, so level B, level of service or census code, is students are in the gen ed population 79 to 40% of the day. Level C, that's our self-contained placement, and they are with gen ed 40% or less of the day. And of course, D placement, that is a separate private placement. It's not within our district, and they do not commingle with their same age typical peers.
So can I just jump in and say that when we were talking about inclusion and getting those inclusion points, when we look at Blue Horizon, all of those kids are included because they're in an A or a B. And an A allows that student to be included with their peers and not pulled out for special education. In some cases, the teachers will even go in and push in. So that makes, they're still with their peers. So that's what we talk about when we talk about inclusion and getting those extra points.
All right, I'm going to talk about some preschool celebrations. I'm really excited about some of the things that have happened in the last couple months. We've been working really hard. We are in the process of adding our 5th preschool classroom. I think you guys voted, hopefully, on the job description tonight to get that posted. And we recently became a DES, which is the Department of Economic Security approved childcare facility, so we can get families in that may not be able to afford our tuition and offer, depending on their income, different rates for them. We received an $80,000 one-time personnel grant for us to cover that itinerant position. And the itinerant position, I think, is important to explain in preschool because we push into our inclusion classrooms. So if a student has an IEP, the general education teacher sometimes is not certified to work on those minutes. And so our itinerant developmental preschool teacher, she pushes in and she works with the students in the classroom and services those minutes for them. And then we also just became a Quality First preschool site. We had our assessments a couple weeks ago, which is kind of nerve-wracking when you've never gone through that before. And I just got the phone call today that they are coming back, so we will at least be a 3-star rated because they will not come back for this next part unless we are 3, and the highest you can get is 5. So we're doing good. So they're going to be coming back to do that. But once you become a Quality First preschool site, it opens the doors to a lot of really good practices. And that could be coaching with developmentally appropriate practices, a child care health consultant, a Quality First coordinator, incentive funds, and if you're a 3-star rated or higher, you also get scholarships. So we will be able to get more kids in that really need preschool. And the biggest thing is just offering best practice, high quality preschool. I want people in the community to want to come here and our name to be out there so that way they're like, oh, Liberty Preschool, that's where we want to be. So those are some exciting things that have been happening. I can't remember if I'm next. Yep. And something else that I wanted to add with that is a lot of times when preschoolers start in a school and they have a really positive experience, they will stay in the district, and a lot of times open enrollment and want to stay at the school that they're at too. Some of our breakdown, excuse me, we have 32 preschool severe delay and 43 developmental delay, and 1 right now with autism. And I'm going to let Kay explain that real quick because it looks off balance when you see 32, 43, and 1. So let me let her explain that.
So the state just changed the regulations. When we have a preschool student coming in, they're either severe delay or developmentally delay, and we could not, even if our psychs felt that a child had autism or autism tendencies, we couldn't get give them that label. We wouldn't get funding for them. And so what happened is that the outside service providers, the parents were coming back saying, wait, you have to give my child an autism label because I have all this documentation. And the state said, because I want to go to get services or go to a special autism school, they wouldn't take a child with a developmental delay. They had to have that autistic category. So what happened was they opened it up to us now that if we have a preschool student with an eligibility that our preschool psych determined with their team and the outside clinical, then we could give that child an autism diagnosis and then still get funding for it. So they just changed that this year. So what you're seeing is one student that we did that change in eligibility, but now as time goes on, you'll see some more students that do have an autistic eligibility, and for parents that gives them more funding.
Excuse me, is the funding different weight-wise for the autism students?
Absolutely, yes.
And then we have 9 speech language impairment, 2 are walk-in speech, meaning they are not in the preschool program, but they come in once a week, 1 vision impairment, and then the inclusion preschool numbers, which are really exciting because it has grown a lot in the last couple years. We have 24 inclusion preschool students, and that means that they're either tuition-paying students or approved through DES. And then I have 2 scheduled preschool screenings right now. So as soon as there's a space, I try to get them in. When there's a phone call, I bring the families in and screen them and then get them enrolled.
So last Thursday, we had a special education parent forum. And I think that it turned out pretty good. We got to hear from the parents and what they're thinking and what they're feeling. We want to continue that forum every month, have some of those participants support us with a parent handbook and some other ideas, bringing in presenters and those experts to support them with things that they may need. And thank you very much, Brian, for joining us. We're glad that you came. So here's our next steps. They kind of fall in line with our goals. We're going to continue to train our special education leads so that they can start looking at IEPs and compliance. So we want them to be able to look at their IEPs as the lead and look at their teams to see if they are in compliance. It's kind of like a train the trainer model so that everyone will be able to stay in compliance and we won't have to rush to be in compliance when they come to check us. That will always be in compliance with our paperwork. And as well as best practices, we want to continue with best practices. I'm currently doing all the professional development for self-contained, and Stephanie is doing all the professional development for the resource teachers. We also want to create more opportunities for our teachers to go ahead and share their expertise. So I'm currently having teachers go observe good practices so that they can see other teachers and how they're working with students with disabilities. We are fostering the implementation of Reading Horizon Elevate, and that is the support from Reading Horizon. It's the resources that our special ed resource teachers are learning to implement to help with those scores. Again, we talked about subgroups. We want those subgroups to grow. And of course, we want to create that 5-star preschool, and to get a 3-star in our first attempt, that's pretty good. And then continue to build relationships, of course, with our parents so that they feel that they're a part of their child's special ed learning and process. Okay. And do you have any questions? Questions?
Board members, any questions?
I have one question. If we go back to slide 6, if you don't mind, this was talking about the percentages.
Yep.
So there we go. So Arizona State is 15.95. We're at 16.
Correct.
And I apologize if I missed. Is preschool showing under Liberty?
Yes.
Is that included in that 16?
Yes.
So is the danger we have if we, because you stated if we go over 16, the state's going to look at us and say, what's going on, right?
Absolutely.
If our preschool continues to grow, that number is going to grow.
It is. It's going to grow. Now, with preschool, because we're building our preschool. So basically, in the past, we just had developmental preschools. We're building. It is going to grow. But remember, how do we get those percentages from the growing population of general ed students? So that's how we average it out. So our hopes that our general ed population is going to grow as quickly as our special ed population. That's why we really want to do those interventions for special education. And if we don't go through the child study team and do those interventions, we may be labeling students that are really not special ed. So that's, that is our, kind of slowing it down and making sure that kids are getting what they need in general ed and those tier 1 and then tier 2, tier 3 interventions.
Member Kenyon, I'll just jump in and say it's been my experience that like what Mrs. Hamrick is saying is completely accurate. However, I don't want you to get the sense that if we were like at 16.1, like alarm bells go off and people are sensed.
No.
It's been my experience if for some reason we caught their eye and we were 18 or 19%, they would want to say, hey, what's happening? And even on the lower end too, a lot of times the districts that are very low, the state likes to see, hey, what are you guys doing with your identification or what's
Absolutely.
happening? And so just so you know, when you're a percentage point or two, wouldn't you say, okay, it's okay, but if we were a few percentage points,
It's
then
5.
it kind of catches people's attention.
5% is
Okay.
when the alarm bells go off if we're 5 below or 5 above.
Yeah, and I think saying that we have these preschools going, I mean, that explains a lot of it, right? I mean, that hopefully self-explanatory. And then speaking to the stars, we're at possibly 3, but that could be more, right?
Actually, we don't know yet. So I was only going to get the phone call for the class assessment if we at least made a 3. We could still get a 4 or 5.
Right, that's
So,
exciting.
Coming in December to do the assessment, and then we'll know more. So I'll
Good.
keep you
Well,
updated.
we're looking forward to that. Thank you.
The districts that I've worked with before, they've never gotten a 3 on their first time. It's always been a 1, 2. So to get a 3 or even a 4, it's almost unheard of.
Fantastic.
And it's great, whether we agree or disagree with the labels, such as the school letter grade, those are things that build the confidence of the community. And when a parent says, wow, this is a 4-star preschool, they may not even know the genesis or what that means, but they want to bring their child. It's like an A or a B school. It really attracts them. So that's a great job out of the gate to get a 3-star.
And understanding the scholarships that we get so we'll get the funding from DES. So even though they're getting a scholarship and they're coming in, DES is going to pay us. So it's, they're going ahead and they're going to be paying more than what we charge our folks. So that's the caveat to that. We're going to get a great deal with that being a DES preschool.
I'm just curious, how long have you all been working on this preschool model?
Well, Crystal and I, when I first started here, Crystal and I started on it. And we've been, for the last 3 years. And then, we pushed through. I need a coordinator. I can't do this on my own. I wish I could. But that's not my wheelhouse. It was Crystal High's wheelhouse. When Crystal left, then Tara came aboard this year. So, we've been working on it since I've been here. The districts that I've worked in before, I've kind of been put in the place to fix and build preschool. So
If I could just add, this is the second year. So last year was the first year we had all of our preschool at one location. And then this is our second year with this model.
Right. Yes. So it's, yeah, this is our second year with this model, correct.
Okay.
Inclusion, this is our first year. We've always had a developmental, but when I came here, they were all in different places. And it's nice to have preschool at different campuses, but when you have them in the same campus, they have that PLC, they have that collaboration with each other, and you can have that preschool inclusion model. So that's why we moved it over there. But it's always been in the works, I think, for quite a while.
And there's been, we heard at the very end of last year that we were having trouble meeting the minutes for IEP. Are we having that same problem currently?
We are not.
Okay.
Because we added teachers, and the one teacher that was missing, we do have someone in place right now. But no, we are not having any missed minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to add really quick with the inclusion model, our teachers are amazing. We are having conversations where kids are visiting the inclusion classrooms from developmental. And this work now is huge because when they get to kindergarten, a lot of the kids that we've been working with and pushing in gen ed and, you know, having go to those gen ed classrooms may be able to go to a kindergarten class that's gen ed instead of a self-contained, which would help get those numbers down. So I have to give the teachers over there big kudos for the conversations and the hard work that they're doing, because it's not easy, but they make a difference every day, and I'm so proud of them. So.
And our self-contained and resource teachers, they've been working really hard this year too.
Okay, members, our next item, thank you very much for that, and congratulations for the great successes you're having. Our next item will be 5.1 Governing Board Update. We'll start down at the end. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, President Todd. As Ms. Hemrick had indicated, I actually got to spend a few hours with the special ed forum, and you know, that was very enlightening for me. You know, I do have a background with a child that was autistic, but to see how far that we've come this last year was really exciting to me, and the programs and the successes that we're having with these children. We still have some challenges. We have some staffing issues that we're going to address, I hope, in our budget this year, and see if we can't get some of those issues handled. But overall, the input that we got from the parents was what was nice about it is we saw that it was fairly consistent. There was like 3 or 4 main bullet points that they brought forward that we could really work on. And Ms. Hemrick's going to bring some of those before the board. I'm assuming at some point that we can start addressing those. But I had actually fun sitting there working with the parents and some of the teachers that showed up. It was, I think we have 4 more, and I intend on being at those. But I think that was critical in getting this program to where we need it to go. So thank you, everybody that participated in that. I got to tour Estrella and got to visit a few classrooms. We were led by Carly and Aiden. They were great tour guides. You know, I have to say it was probably the most impressive for me, visiting schools and be able to see what's going on in the classroom participation with the students was off the board. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I was one of those kids, you know, in school. I sat in the back of the room, didn't say much. Every kid was participating in the classrooms. That's kudos for the teachers. You know, our new phonics programs, unbelievable. So we have a lot to be proud for. We still have work to do. We'll continue doing that work. But I love visiting the schools, and being able to firsthand see what's going on in the schools is so important for us. So again, thank you.
Board Member Aguirre.
I wasn't able to attend, but I got feedback on the Veterans Breakfast. Miss Weiner. Is it still Weiner? Or are we going by Murray now? Yeah, okay. Oh, Murray now. Okay, fair enough. That got family members who are veterans, and they thanked Liberty for doing that. Thank recognition. It's always a good thing. So thank you so much.
Board Member Bixler.
Yeah, I had lots of places to visit as well. The first was the Dia de los Muertos celebration over at Las Brisas, and it was terrific. I've been to that before, and this was as good as any of the predecessors. It was really, really good. One of the things that really was good about being there is when a couple of the parents discovered that I was on the board, they made a special point of coming over and talking to me and telling me how much they appreciated the inclusivity that they have found on this campus and the change that they had in their children, going from being hesitant to be part of a campus to being thrilled and wanting to go to school. So big changes going on over at Las Brisas, and those parents, that was great. Second place I went to, I did get a chance to work at a couple of schools helping out with their Thanksgiving celebrations, which was just great. For those of you that haven't ever attended it, it's designed for parents to have Thanksgiving dinner with their children at school, and it takes a massive effort to get it done. And there were all kinds of volunteers at these two different campuses that came out and helped out. It was terrific turnout. Food service on our campuses is spectacular. I think at West Star they served over 600 meals while we were there, and it was really hopping, but they did it and met everybody's needs. Great job, our food service. So I want to thank them for doing that. Just make sure I've got everybody covered here. Yeah, one of the great things was watching Mrs. Camp. She was over at West Star and helped out there. I think she's added a couple things to her resume that she's going to, trash collection was one of them, so yeah. Then I went over to Estrella Mountains, and we had a tour of their campus, and I agree. Estrella Mountains been doing some really good things for quite a while, but boy, what a step up they've made here this year. The engagement of the kids was wonderful. It was spectacular what we saw as far as the rigor. The one thing I walked away with after that campus tour was the word rigor. And boy, are they doing it there at Estrella Mountain. It is spectacular what they're doing. I did want to call out specifically Mr. Joyce. We went into his math classroom and watched it for a while, and it was terrific what was going on there. Two things that really stood out. He had given the kids an assignment, so we got a chance to go watch what they were trying to do to construct the assignment. And as a part of that assignment, he told them that equivalence would be a good way to display. So my question was, how many kids in this classroom actually know what an equivalent was? So I went over to one of the groups and asked them, I said, what's an equivalent? And boy, did they tell me. They had it defined and told me exactly what it was. The other thing I want to call Mr. Joyce on was that even though this was a math class, there was an expectation of writing. And I think that's exactly how this has to go. You need to write in math. So well done, Mr. Joyce. Well done, Estrella Mountain. What a terrific campus. The last thing I want to bring up, and this is a little bit different format. In my board report at the October 30th board meeting, I was hoping to celebrate the West Star Estrella Mountain vocal music programs at Canamia. And within that, I had referenced a song title and an artist to one of the songs that had been performed. I was wrong. That song that was performed was not the song that I referenced. I was wrong. My mistake created concern and a discrediting of those vocal music programs. I apologize for my mistake and the harm that I may have caused. It was not my intent. Thank you.
Board Member Kenyon.
I didn't get to make it to a lot of the events going around the district, but I sure saw a lot on social media. And to Board Member Aguirre's point, I saw a lot of really good things about what our district did for their veterans during Veterans Day. And it was just phenomenal, good feedback for that. Looked like there was a good turnout for the Halloween trunk or treat as well with the school buses as well. So I'm very proud of the district being involved with these things. And just, you know, it's not far away and you guys are already probably starting to bake, but Thanksgiving's right around the corner. So I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and hope this is a good time for you and your family.
Thank you. Have a couple of things I just wanted to clarify up a little bit. We recently had an inquiry about the status and process for the selection of the permanent superintendent for our school district. And I just wanted to ensure that the information is shared with the broadest possible audience. I felt like this might be the best way to do it. At our last meeting, the school district board was met in executive session during our regular district meeting to discuss the legal and process requirements for the hiring of a permanent superintendent. Those discussions were to ensure that the district complies with all legal requirements of a search and affords the most fair and transparent process that we can provide for. I also want to be clear that our current superintendent did not request and was not part of those discussions and will not be in the future either. In the next several weeks, I wrote this a few days ago, tonight we may have some more clarification, but our board will be finalizing the process and timeline that will be used in the hiring of a permanent superintendent. At that time, we'll release to the public a date-specific document that outlines the process and steps that will be used to reach a successful conclusion in the hiring of a superintendent. If anybody has questions, they're always welcome to call me or email. Next, I wanted to just update a little bit. I've traveled the last couple of weeks for work, and I missed the special education parent forum. I wanted to apologize for that. Unfortunately, the day job, which pays a little bit more than this job, intervened, and it's rare, but it happened. So to those parents, know that special ed is important to me. I missed it, but I will do everything I can to be at any future special ed events. Again, you've heard it already. The Veterans Day event that happens at Liberty every year is fantastic. I know some of the other campuses did stuff as well, but each campus kind of has something aside from their signature program that is unique, and that Veterans Day program at Liberty has always been fantastic. So I applaud Mrs. Murray to continuing that tradition, and really it's a long-lasting legacy. So perfect. Last but not least, I wanted to do something that's quite honestly probably a little overdue, but I took the presidency in January. In the process, when this district office had some problems, gavels got moved, gavels got lost, but the gavel that we've used at this meeting was used by the last about 5 years by Mr. Aguirre, and I wanted to present him this one. The district ordered a new one, so for all that you did in leadership and then with this board, just want to pass this on to you. And with that, I'm complete. We'll move on to our next topic, call to the public. We have one, Ms. Kelly Zimmerman. As a reminder, it's 3 minutes. The board's not typically allowed to comment on any of it, but we will certainly hear from you and listen intently.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to talk about item 8.2, consideration and/or action for the superintendent search process or permanent superintendent employment. I want to say two things before I begin. One, I do not know if the board is planning to offer the permanent superintendent position tonight, as they have not talked publicly before this meeting about their plans, but since public comment is first, I want to ensure that my voice is heard before a decision is made. Secondly, I'm not speaking about any particular person, but rather the process in which the board has gone about this. I am very concerned that the board may hire a permanent superintendent tonight without conducting a full search or any interviews. As I stated at the last meeting, the board already committed the $15,000 for a full search to GR Recruiting, so it makes no fiscal sense not to conduct the actual search. Secondly, no stakeholder input has been gathered about what the community is looking for in a permanent superintendent. This board leadership decided to skip over that part during the interim search and led the public to believe that they would include stakeholder input and feedback during the permanent search. Mr. Todd has frequently said in meetings that everything in the district is great, no one has anything negative to say. Do you have data to back up that claim? Has the district done a morale survey? I know Dr. Monroe has had a survey for parents to fill out. This was written before I came to the study session, but that data has not been shared publicly. Why not? The district posted on their social media that we had 86 new teachers at new teacher orientation, which means 86 teachers left last year because we have not experienced any growth. To me, that isn't a sign that the staff liked that the board removed the superintendent in the middle of the year or the direction that the board was taking the district. I also believe the failure of the bond election is very telling that our community does not trust our board leadership at this time. The city of Goodyear passed all 3 questions, which means the community isn't afraid to support an increase in taxes. Bonds are usually easier to pass than overrides, And the last bond in 2019 passed on the first try. And last year we were able to pass our override with a tax increase. And this bond just failed with the largest margin of defeat in the last 5 years of district elections. Have you considered that people, especially staff, may not feel comfortable bringing concerns to you? I think these statements are not valid when you don't have a way to quantify them. Just as our teachers in our district do every day, we must have data to back up our claims, otherwise they have no meaning behind them. I'm not here to tell you who to hire or to not hire, but simply asking you to honor your word from March and April of this year. Conduct a full search to find the best candidate, whoever that may be, involve and listen to stakeholders in the process, and make a decision that is best for the students of this district.
Thank you. Next up will be item 7.1, approval of the consent agenda.
If I could, I'd like to have 7.3 pulled, 7.6 pulled, and 7.7 pulled.
Okay, 7.3, 7.6, and 7.7?
Yes.
Okay, members, that leaves us with 7.1. Be our consent agenda approval. We'll have 7.2, 7.4, 7.5, 7.8, 7.9 on the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move that we approve item 7.1, 7.2, 7.4, 7.5, and 7.8, 7.9 from the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. When I call your name, specify your vote. Board Member Parks?
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre?
Yes.
Board Member Bixler?
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We'll show that approved. 5 yeses, 0 nos. Move to our first item pulled, which will be 7.3, approval of personnel action items. Dr. Mahorn. And Mr. Aguirre, if you want to.
Yeah, I just had a question. So I'm looking at this, and it's got a description here under supplemental compensation, and it says classroom coverage. I'm sorry, apologize. What does that mean?
When teachers have to cover if there's a failed sub, and so a classroom teacher has to sub over their planning period instead of having their planning. And so they are per contract, they're paid for that.
Okay. So I guess one question I have is, why are there so many entries? Because I thought we were fully staffed.
Yes, it's fully staffed, but this is if teachers call in sick or aren't there for, and we don't have a sub, and they don't have a sub for them. So these are teachers that are having cover for other teachers that are sick or out for some reason.
So it's substitute
Yes.
teachers. Are they not considered part of the equation of when we say fully staffed?
Yes.
They
So
are.
we are fully staffed. What this is, sub coverage is, let's say we have 50 teachers at one school, 50 teachers fully staffed, but 2 teachers are sick that day and we can't find subs. And so that's why and if there's no subs, then that's why teachers have to cover.
Well, that's what I mean. We don't have I thought that we had a pool of subs that we pull from.
We have
for that. And-
yes, but sometimes subs fail and we don't have a sub for certain classrooms.
Okay, so subs aren't considered part of.
Like our permanent staff, no. No,
Okay.
yes, I understand now what you're saying.
What? So the other question is on some of this it says $13, $25, or $50. What constitutes that?
I think that it depends on their position. I would have to ask and let you know, because I think it depends on whether they're a fully certified teacher, if they're I can't remember but like a temporary, have a temporary cert. I'm pretty sure that is why, but I can check on that and just get back to you for sure.
Okay. And then it just says, at the bottom, it says over ratio special education teacher, $30 per day. So the over ratio, is that the same thing as classroom coverage, or what is over ratio?
No, so over ratio is if ratio for special education is, let's say, 18, and a teacher might have new students move in, so now they have 23. So they are paid for that over ratio. For this particular case, though, it's from Blue Horizons, and they're in the final process of hiring another teacher. So this will go away.
Okay. Okay, so if they're over the ratio, special education teachers, or as it's listed here, get $30 a day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Just for clarification, Ms. Camp, we've been doing this for a number of years, I believe, correct? This is nothing new.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
If I might add something to that, I think it's significant to notice, especially after the personnel reports we got last year, there aren't any resignations on this. So take a look. There are no resignations.
People are happy.
And then, I'm sorry.
We got to vote on this one. Do you have more questions on this one, or are you going to the next? Okay.
Good with this one.
All right, any more questions, comments on 7.3? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve item 7.3.
Have a motion, a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to approve item 7.3. When I call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks?
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre?
Yes.
Board Member Bixler?
Yes.
Board Member Kenyon?
Yes.
I'm also an yes, so that approved 5 yes, 0 no. Next will be item 7.6, approval, ratification of payroll vouchers 109, 1009, 110, 1010, 10111, 112, and 1012 in the amount of $3,884,893.79. Mr. Aguirre.
So the question I had on this was vouchers 1009 and 1010. There's an entry that calls out Hammer Off Law Group. Hammer Off Law Group. What is that in relation to?
That is, an employee has had a garnishment against them, and we have to send those funds to that law group.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Because I looked him up and it was a personal injury lawyer, and I was like, what's going on? Thank you for that, appreciate that. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve item 7.6.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Bixler, a second by Board Member Parks. When I call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks?
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre?
Yes.
Board Member Bixler?
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We will show that proof. 5 yes, 0 no. Next will be item 7.7, Board Member Aguirre.
And then this question's on vouchers 2413 and 2412. So there was a listing on there under Gus Rosenfeld for the election. And then also out-of-pocket expense, but it doesn't list what that out-of-pocket expense was.
It most likely was for copying expenses or for mileage for them to come out here. I would lean more towards the copy expense.
Okay, isn't that part of our prepaid legal with the trust?
Not for bond.
So we can't use prepaid legal for the bond that comes out of district
There's not
fund?
a law firm under prepaid legal for bond services.
There's not,
There is not.
even though Gus Rosenfeld's part of the trust?
But it was for our bond election
Okay,
and our upcoming bond sale.
okay. The other question was there's multiple entries across some vouchers for Valley Schools Management. What is this the same Valley Schools that is a member of the trust?
This here is for consulting services for Mr. Bill Munch, who helps us on the purchasing side to make sure we're in compliance with RFQs or other things that we're doing purchasing-wise. He's a support for our purchasing specialist.
So he's with Valley Schools. I thought he was with somebody else.
No, he's with Valley Schools.
That's the name of the entity.
Mhm.
Okay, I apologize. That's why I didn't recognize it.
Mhm.
Are they the same? Are they the Valley Schools that are a member of the trust, though? Also,
Is Valley Schools a member of the trust?
that's what I'm.
No, they're.
I don't know.
No, I don't think they are. I think Valley Schools is like,
Would that be like the Mojave Group, if you will?
no, they do. They have employee benefits. Valley Schools does employee benefits.
Yeah, Valley Schools, and Mr. can tell me, maybe you can comment on Valley Schools. The one I know is almost like an insurance
Yeah.
provider, or that maybe Mr. Aguirre's heard of. A lot of districts go with Valley Schools. Are you familiar?
Mr. Monroe, members of the board, yes, I'm very familiar with Valley Schools. I've known them for a long, long time. And they do benefits. Employee benefits is their main thing.
Mr. Cantelme is here as legal representation. Dave Cantelme from Cantelme and Brown in place of Clyde Dangerfield, who couldn't be here tonight.
Okay. And then, just to clear up, I'm just curious, on voucher 2413 also, there's an entry for myself for $40 for the ASBA county meeting. And I'm just wondering, Brian was also at that meeting.
We have to have receipts in order to pay.
Got a free meal.
All right, then.
So we can follow up with you, Minnie. We can follow up with Brian, make sure we get that squared.
The last minute.
I take that as a
Oh.
donation.
Okay. And then the last one is voucher 2412, Cochise Contractors. It says that they did testing on the fuel tanks.
Yes.
Right, and the lines, and I was just curious, was the test successful? Did we pass the test?
Yes. It's an old tank, very old tank.
Yep.
And their recommendation at this point is to pull those tanks up and replace them, part of the conversation with DLR, because otherwise we have to raise them to get to the other pump at the bottom, and it's more costly to do that than it is just to put new pumps in.
Okay. And last is Rebecca Gannon Bayanig.
Becky is our Project Momentum District coach, and so she is funded by the Project Momentum grant.
Okay, thank you for that. That's it. Thank you. Appreciate everyone.
Okay, hearing no further questions, we'll take a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve item 7.7.
A motion to approve 7.7. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second for 7.7. When I call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks.
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved. 5 yes, 0 no. That will clear out our consent agenda. We'll now move on to general business. Item 8.1, discussion consideration of permanent superintendent search process. Mr. Gary Ray. And members, before we get started, I want to remind everybody, the Vice of the Legal Counsel, this is a discussion about the process of filling the permanent superintendent role. It is not about a specific person. There has been nobody noticed in this meeting, so therefore we need to make sure that we do not speak to a person, but rather the process of filling the permanent superintendent position. Mr. Ray, go ahead.
Good evening here, board members. My name is Gary Ray. Maybe some of the other folks, you all folks know me from GR Recruiting President. And GR Recruiting and I have been doing searches for over 40 years, not only here in Arizona, but around the country. So I have a pretty good idea about how to conduct a search, and one of the things I did during the process as part of our agreement, I did the interim search. And during that part of the process, I did tell the board that there was a shortage of folks out there, and there's a shortage of folks going into the next search process. I can tell you that. I just came back from a couple national conventions, which I attended. Other consultants were there, and we all had some of the same concerns. Where are the candidates? And many boards are looking internally, look at the interim. When I do an interim search, I always try to find one that's going to fit there and probably stay there, because when we do a search, one of the things that candidates look at is turnover on the board, turnover, how many superintendents, the environment, whether they're going to apply, and the politics around the country. Public education is under attack, from all kinds of sides. And so with all that being said, when you have turnover of superintendents, there certainly is a staff morale and a consistency, here we go again type thing, where's the leadership? So we will take on, the search process, but one of the things that I would be less than honest and candid with you is if I didn't tell you that the pool is going to be pretty shallow out there. Doesn't mean that there aren't candidates out there. The question is, are there candidates worthy to go forward on if there's other choices? So what we would do is, interview every board member in the process, which we did recently, in the spring. That carried over a little bit in the summer. And then we certainly would do any kind of a listening tour that the board would want. I haven't come tonight to tell you what your process ought to be, because that's something that we have to sit down and kind of put together, map out, receiving input, so forth. We did, do some of that, through the board members themselves, and I'm sure the board members have your own listening tour out there and listening to people, public and parents and so forth. So it certainly will be up to the board to work with us on what kind of process you want. The typical process would be interviewing the board members, possibly staff members and others. But that doesn't mean you have to do it that way, because not all boards do things the same way. The thing from my point of view and my years of experience is saying, what's the pool going to look like? Is it going to be any better this year than next year and the year after? And I think I've got to tell you, it's going to be pretty shallow. When we recruited for the interim, I was pleased that we did have some folks there for you to take a look at, and you did interview some experienced people as well as some other people around the country. And we were very fortunate in that pool, and you were very fortunate to be where you're at today. And I've got to tell you, it might not get any better, possibly worse. I know that doesn't paint a bright picture, but on the other hand, it's the truth. I get paid to recruit people, and our firm is one of the strongest recruiting firms in the country, not only in this state, but regionally and nationally. But I heard a lot of good things tonight, and I certainly think as board members and staff members, and I've been in a lot of school districts, and I can tell you that you had a lot of awards and it looked pretty good to me. And that's something you'd be proud of. That'll be something I can sell too, when I'm recruiting. If that's part of the process, you do decide to move forward on the search, and that's how things ought to be. We'll certainly take the positive things and go out there and recruit candidates. But one of the things candidates do, though, not only that turnover, but they look at the behavior of the board. They look how is the board functioning. Is there bad behavior on the board? They do look at meetings. They talk to people, and that's not necessarily always a positive thing, to have board meetings and things might not be going the way they should be going. So we will have a challenge, but does that mean we won't find some people? That's not the case. And I told you something similar in the spring when we went out to recruit, and the number of candidates wanting to move. Your good candidates are not reading the want ads. They need to be recruited. They're not just going to go up and apply. And so you need to know that. It's not the number of candidates, it's the quality of candidates that you have. And there is a shortage of quality candidates and experienced superintendents. A lot of experienced superintendents are not willing to move. What often is filling the pool are deputies, assistant superintendents, aspiring people. Because if someone has a good district right now, and they got a decent board, they're working, they're making some good positive things for kids, money doesn't always buy the candidate. They're pretty happy where they're at. So what we would do is move forward, if that's the direction board wants to go. It certainly is your call. But I certainly can't guarantee you that you're going to be any better off than where you're at. Okay?
Board members, any questions?
Yes, President Todd. I've got a statement and a question. First of all, I think we had 31 original candidates for
And inquiries, 31 inquiries. We
Okay.
only had 23.
23
completed.
Okay. Well, out of those 23, this is just my opinion going through the process. Two people stood out at the top, and the difference between those two top people and the rest was substantial, in my opinion. And
It's not unusual.
right, and they're with us here tonight. My concern is going out and spending more taxpayer dollars and ending up back where we're at again, a lot of time, a lot of disruption. And my question is, segue right into it, which is, there was a comment brought up about the $15,000 we'd owe you either way. Now, according to that contract, that would be for a full search for the first. If we went into the first, that was according to contract. If we extend that again, it'll cost us more than the $15,000, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, thank you. That's all, thank you.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment as well. I was not comfortable with doing an interim search. I wanted to do a permanent search at the last time, but we had a problem facing us that we don't have this time. What we had last time was we were getting ready to open our campuses up. School was about to start, and we had a 4-day week that we were dealing with, a brand new thing. So because of that, I was willing to accept an interim search with the idea that we would do a permanent search later. And that's where I stand. I don't think we had nearly enough community input on what our decision finally was driven to as far as the interim. We promised the community that they would be a part of this, and I think we need to fulfill that promise.
So, in regards to the search process,
Yes, sir.
the process itself, would that be getting community involvement, getting employee involvement, things of that nature?
Yes. I mean, if you, yeah, that would be a decision the board would want. That's something that we often do is, talk to staff, talk to the board, of course, and do some survey work and that type of thing.
To hear that voice, that way there would be no controversy possibly moving forward or things of that nature, I would imagine. That way you could stand there and say everybody's voice was heard. You may not like the outcome, but everybody's voice was heard.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that last statement because I've been doing it so long that sometimes people, if they don't get their choice or who they think should be the superintendent or their profile, then they feel like their voice hasn't been heard. So you always have that, Is it a process? Yes. Do I often find the profile that the board puts together in interviewing the board, it often matches the community. It truly does, because you are elected by the community. But is that a process that I use? Yes, it is. Yeah.
Would that be something you would implement with us also?
If you
that you would recommend to implement?
If you move down the road on a permanent search, that would be something, and I think we talked about that the last time I was here in the spring.
Right. Okay.
But that would be a process the board would have to approve, but I would give you several options.
And how long would that process take, do you reckon?
Well, if you mean the entire process?
Yeah.
Well, assuming that and this is the Thanksgiving and the holiday, which is a dead time for the search business because trying to get people together, But I would say that you would be looking at something, I would try to speed it up as much as I could if you move forward, only because we're racing for candidates. And candidates will be looking at the ones that might be being recruited. They're going to want to make that decision earlier than later. So we probably would be looking at something in February, March.
If we started
be completed, yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. If we started in January?
Yeah, because what we would have to, and we would want to expedite that. I'd have to put together a schedule when we would start, but thinking, out loud, you had Thanksgiving here, and then you have the holidays. So those are really dead times, to get people to, try to come out to even give a voice, let alone try to recruit candidates.
Because it could be ideal to have some overlap, right? If the board decided to go that direction.
Overlap.
The permanent superintendent and the interim superintendent, of have a bit of an overlap there for the school year itself.
Yeah, I think though, what happens is if you have an interim, there's always a question from candidates whether that person's going to apply or not, and that hurts your pool one way or another, or you lose your interim because then suddenly that person's a free agent. And so when you go out and do a search, and I tell boards this all the time, if you have an interim, you have a strong interim, then you go out and you're sending a message to that person, okay, well, we're not going to hire you, might consider you, but then that person's a free agent, and then they go out and apply, and then you look at the pool and say, well, why did we do that? Because we lost probably the best candidate. And that's just the truth. So I tell, not that I'm trying to beat myself out of a fee. That's not the point. A higher fee. What I am here to tell you that when I recruit interim superintendents, I try to recruit people that might be good enough for the position, because changing over of leadership, moving from several superintendents and then getting an interim and then moving again causes some continuity issues that go right on down in the classroom sometimes, because staff members don't like change. They like leadership, but they don't like a lot of change. It's just the way they are.
I'd venture to say they like to hear their voice heard too, though, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying that they don't, but I'm also saying the other side too. I've done too many searches where I've sat down with staff members and we've had so many board members changes, or our board's not functioning very well. Who's going to want to come here? That sort of thing. And so we kind of go through that, and when you have a lot of change in leadership, you also have a lot of turnover a lot of times with staff. But I work for the board, so I'm just telling you what the process and answer to your question. If you want to go out there and do the search, we'll certainly do that. But you also, when you do these things, you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons, and that's part of my job, to tell you, based on my 40-some years experience, that be careful what you ask for.
No, yeah.
Sorry.
Board Member Kenyon.
Thank you for that, Dr. Ray. My understanding when we first addressed this at the beginning of the year was that we could look at two options. One is we look at our interim superintendent, see if we like that person, see where the district's going, how things are going, and we could accept that person as the permanent, offer that to them.
That was part of my contract too.
So that was part of the contract. And then the second option obviously is going out for a complete new search and trying to find other possible candidates. I've had a lot of people address me about the district, the direction of the district. However, speaking to both Board Member Guire and Bixler's points, getting more feedback from the community, I would like, before we decide one way or another. What would your recommendation be, if trying to get that community input before we make this actual decision of going one direction or another?
Well, that's a good question. Just thinking about that question is that we certainly could do a survey, a limited, survey that would, not talking about individuals or should we hire this or not hire, and that sort of thing. Maybe a little bit I'm just pulling this out of the air, so don't hold me to it, is that maybe we would ask on a survey, is the district going in the right direction, for instance? That would be a leadership kind of a thing. So it'd be more of an environmental climate type survey. It doesn't have to be a very long survey, but one would be probably 8 to 10 questions that we could put together. I mean, I have a working relationship with K-12 Insight. It's the best customer service in the country, and I'm not a partner or anything like that, but I do have a working relationship. So I use them as a survey for characteristics and traits and I probably would do that with you folks as far as on the characteristics and traits on the profile. But if you're looking for more of a climate of the district and feedback, I could design a survey for you and get that feedback.
Well, that's kind of my point is I'm not into, at this point, just going out for a full search. I've seen and heard a lot of really good things about the momentum of our district and what's going on, and I don't want to lose that. And so that's really where, if we want, I would encourage my fellow board members, get out there and talk to your constituents if you haven't already. I've had a lot of people approach me, call me, talk to me when I'm on campus, when I'm off campus. I've had a lot of feedback already. And so doing a survey is good. We
would be doing a survey anyway if we were doing a full search because, quite frankly, when I do these, what I call y'all come meetings, if a lot of folks at home aren't coming to those meetings, they like, once consultants gone, like everything, you go back online, people just say, well, I don't want to go to the meeting, I want to fill out a survey, and then go fill that survey out. So I would come back and give you a survey, but a lot of that has to do with, the profile type thing. I'm sure I could put some kind of a survey together and put that out on your, on your website, and we could put a notice out to people, staff members, and other parts of the community. I don't think it ought to be just staff because that, the superintendent has to be part of the community too, And so I think we could do that for you and then bring those results back, and then you can decide, how you feel about that. That's a little bit of a hybrid, approach.
Yeah, because right now, as it was stated, yeah, you're on the line for the $15,000 one way or another, but if we go the permanent search, that's going to be more. That's going to go for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like everything else. Everything's, kind of going up, but at the same time, if you want that, I can, I certainly can do that, and figure it out. That would be a little bit different, costs, figured out, but I can probably work K-12 Insight and work something out with them financially, so that would be not so costly for you to do that. And I can do that if you want.
You give us the blue light special.
Yeah, I would give you the blue light special. Mostly if I went to them, their survey would probably be, like a 10,000. Then I started thinking, while I'm standing here, I can probably get something like that around, $3,000 or something like that, $3,500. I haven't talked to them directly.
Dr. Gay?
This is our conversation tonight. Yeah.
Dr. Ray, I'm a little confused on that. I know that our contract as it stands right now, if we hire the interim superintendent, $15,000.
Yeah.
Now, a full search would be more than that. There's no question about that. Maybe starting at about 20. But if we bring in people from out of state and so on, there are going to be costs that will go up. And those are not fixed costs. Those are costs that would be incurred. So we can't really predict that. So right now we're talking difference between 15,000 and whatever it would be 20 plus.
Right.
What you're just offering us, if I understand exactly, is that if that survey can come in at the cost that you're saying, it could be as much as $18,000 for us, the $15,000 for the interim, and then $3,000 for the survey.
And
So we're getting pretty close to $20,000.
Yeah, could be close. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so.
Right. Yeah. It's in the fudge factor area. Yes.
If you did a full search, the survey would be additional as well.
What's that?
If you did a full search, the survey would be additional costs as well on top of the 20,000 or whatever your fee is to do the full search.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Ray.
Did I hear you right?
So if we do a full search, to Board Member Bixler's point, if we
Dr. Ray, you just told us that if you did the survey, the survey's part of the search.
Yeah. The survey that he's asking me, to do an extra kind of a State of the Union type, survey, that would be an additional cost. Plus, the 15, like your example, 3,000, because this is this search. If I was going out and doing a full-blown search, then we'd be talking about trying to, do the profile, of the, what are you looking for in the profile, for the superintendent, leadership style or, community engagement, there's a whole gamut of that would go into that profile. And that would be in that, I would include that search, and answer your question, Mr. President, is that I would include a cost for that special, for that profile search. That would you my total cost, 20 plus.
So that's the key, though. It's 20 plus whatever it costs to fly candidates in, house them, do whatever we need to do. Okay.
I mean, the candidates and stuff like that, it's my job is trying to find them, and I don't know where they're going to be from. I couldn't tell you that.
Yeah, and the profile activity was really solid. I don't know if we'd need an additional survey when we had that profile activity. I would answer the question I think we'd ask, so.
Yeah, it's just how much more do you want, beyond that, But the survey that he was asking me about would be a short survey that would be customized to get some voices in on how you feel, what I call, and I just use the term, the state of the union of the district, how are things going, trying to get that feedback so that you can make a decision whether you want to move forward on the permanent or whether you just want to verify what you were thinking about where you're at now.
And just speaking to that survey that I was talking about, I'm not saying we have to do that.
No.
I mean, that's an option, but I'm not saying we have to do that.
No.
Like I said, there's been a lot of community members that have already voiced, and staff that have already voiced their pleasure with where we're at, so.
Yeah, no, you asked me, could we do something like that? And I gave you, an answer, yes, we can do it. It would be some additional information for you. I think, as board members and, you probably have a pretty good idea where you're at anyway, as far as how you feel about how things are going. And, it doesn't mean, as I said earlier, I think that, the candidates that we had last time were pretty good, but as one of you said, that, always you get the top couple folks that come in and part of the interview process, and I thought we had some pretty good quality candidates, I don't know whether you're going to get any better candidates, at this particular point in time, or you could lose where you're at right now. Other folks may be free agent, and so you lose that. So, it's a bird in the hand. I'm not trying to get to 20-some thousand. That's not, what I'm trying to balance out with you folks. I'll do whatever you folks would like for me to do, but I think, you have a pretty good idea of what you have and where you're going to go, and from my perspective, it's your decision. I don't vote, but I heard a lot of good things tonight. So, any other questions? I think I covered most of 8.1 and beyond, maybe, who knows? Maybe into 8.2, I don't know. But we're here to serve you, and at your pleasure, whatever you want us to do, we'll certainly do that, and whatever direction you go.
Thank you, board members. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, we'll move to item 8.2, consideration and or action for superintendent search process or permanent superintendent employment.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to bring on Mr. Monroe as a permanent superintendent.
I will second that.
Was there any discussion on this item?
We will open discussion as soon as I had a motion and a second, which we do. Now we'll move to discussion. Does anybody have discussion?
Yep.
Board member Aguirre, please go ahead.
So on May 12th, every board member received an email And I would highly recommend that on May 12th, you go to your inboxes. And I think that email is would possibly give pause on a permanent superintendent employment. There's 150 families that were referenced in that email. And they weren't happy. So I'd encourage the board members to go back and look at that email, because that email actually came through at 10 p.m., or I'm sorry, at 6 p.m. And our decision had already been made earlier that evening. So again, that's May 12th for reference. That's all I have.
Yes, Mr. President, as far as discussion, I was pretty clear earlier. I think it's important that our community and our staff get a stronger voice than they've had. It may very well be exactly what could happen is that we are going to stay with where we are, which would be fine with me. But I think it's absolutely critical that we have the voice of our community and our staff represented in this decision.
Just to piggyback off of what you said, Paul, earlier we presented that as a bullet point in our study session, honor the voice of teachers. So I guess there was just a bullet point, so.
I'll reiterate what I said. I've spoken to many staff members, parents, even the kids. And looking at what we saw tonight, the improvements in our school, I love the direction. I've heard from a lot of staff that they love the direction, community members, they love the direction. I don't want to lose that momentum. I want to hold on to what we have, and that is why I'm going to, if anybody voiced concerns, they had all of our numbers. They could have reached out, and there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like it. You can't make 100% of people happy. But overwhelmingly, from what I've heard, that's where my direction goes.
Yeah, I've heard the opposite.
So, members, I have a couple things. One, Board Member Aguirre referenced an email on May 12th. Several on May 12th. The only one I think he might be referring to is an email that came from Cave Creek parents. This district and this board has a policy to not acknowledge or recognize anonymous emails. That's exactly what this is. It is an anonymous email that has no name to it, and it is against our policy to consider that. Secondly, my thoughts are, as we sat earlier in the work session, we saw the number of teachers who had responded back to the current survey. I'm not sure that's even a large enough sample. I know that several of us has made our phone numbers available, our emails available, and most of us attend a lot of campus events and talk to people. I think where we're at currently is that we've provided the ultimate citizen input period since we filled the interim position. I'm not sure that doing any more will do anything but excite one or both bases and bring in data that is skewed and offset. So I, secondly, am greatly concerned. By unanimous consent, when we started this process, we all as a board agreed that Dr. Ray was the subject matter expert. We hear all the time from board members, listen to the subject matter expert, listen to the experts. What I heard from him tonight was our process has worked, it's continuing to work, and we probably shouldn't try to fix a clock that's not broke. And by doing so, we potentially harm this district. When we made the interim decision choice, my concern back then, and a couple of the board members wanted to go immediately to a permanent. My concern was, again, from the subject matter expert, that wasn't the time to be searching for a permanent. We were in the middle of employment cycles. And it was only through some luck that we pulled off a couple of good candidates due to some, I would say, anomalies or just luck. I think it was just luck. My thought process all the time was we would bring a person on, we'd give them the opportunity. I think the majority of the board has recognized that we're pretty happy with where we're at. I would hate to be in this position with a permanent candidate and realize that we're no longer happy. And I think the board needs to greatly consider the risk and the balance. Our best efforts from almost a year ago, sometimes the map changes. Sometimes you got a flat tire, sometimes the road is closed. Sometimes there's a new expressway that you can do stuff faster. So we've set out, we've given lots of opportunity. We have public comment at every meeting. Those who have concerns can call us, they can write to us, and they can show up at this podium. And to this date, I just haven't heard anybody really express anything other than praise for the direction that we're headed in this district. And I guess this would be a message to staff, to the community, and everybody else that if you have concerns, bring them forward, because if you don't, we're not aware. It's really hard to represent people that don't bring forth their concerns. But at this point, my constituent base overall is very happy with the process that we've heard based off of the feedback that I've had. You know, we go to school events and we're not just there to watch the kids perform, but we're also there by statute to know what's going on in the district, to have an understanding of the community feel, to have an understanding of staff. And that's what we need to do, and that's what I've been doing since this process started, actually before the process started. So those are my thoughts. We have a motion, we have a second. If there's no more discussion, we'll call for a vote, and then we'll decide from there.
One question,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
President. As you had referenced that the district has policy, could you, about emails, could you reference that policy, please?
I would have to look it back up, but I do believe we've had a policy about anonymous emails.
I don't believe we actually do. I just wanted to make sure that that was a factual statement, so.
I'll look it up. Personally, I think whether we have it or not, it's very dangerous to listen to anonymous, especially from a group of constituents. What I'm hearing is let's listen to 150 people who aren't even our constituents make decisions about our local control. Local control is right here in this district. To be quite honest, I don't care what a bunch of disgruntled parents in Cave Creek think. In fact, I'd like to send them a thank you card.
Mr. President, can you just ask the question, please?
Okay, question has been called. The motion on the table is to offer Dr. Court Monroe a permanent superintendent position. I have a motion, I have a second. When I call your name, we'll specify your vote. Board Member Parks.
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre.
No.
Board Member Bixler.
Nay.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I am also an aye. We will show that the motion approved, 3 yeses and 2 nos. Our next item is number 8.3, discussion on capital bond election results. Dr. Monroe.
President Todd and members of the board, first I'd like to say I appreciate any vote of confidence that comes from the board. It certainly means a lot. I'm kind of without words right now, but the agenda item that we have in front of us is for the capital bond election, and as the board knows, it looks like our bond fell short. I have the results as of 4:42 p.m. today. There were approximately 25,533 ballots issued to voters in the Liberty Elementary School District boundaries. 7,144 votes were counted. That's about 28% rate. Now, just so you're aware, the latest numbers that we have from the county, Maricopa County, are a 24% return rate. So ours was higher than the county rate. And this is a non-election year, as you guys know. So as of earlier, the results were 56% no, 44% yes. So a difference of about 921 votes. Although it's not officially called, we see that passing the bond will not be the case. As with any campaign, there are likely a lot of variables for this. Let me just tell you a few that I've had in my mind the last 8 days. Not enough community involvement or grassroots effort. Voter fatigue, when you go out to voters over multiple cycles. The city of Goodyear had 3 ballot measures that they had not had to run a bond for quite a long time. Safety, parks and rec, and roads, and they all look like they passed. The placement on the ballot for a Goodyear voter, where was the actual placement? A lot of times voters are not apt to say yes on everything. Maybe our communication was certainly not good enough, and I own that. The messaging or being able to meet with groups, the sell was not good enough perhaps to our voters. Perhaps they were confused and they were not aware. Conservative communities, if you look at the map of Maricopa County, conservative communities on the outlying part of Maricopa County, a lot of them were not successful. Gilbert, Deer Valley, Queen Creek, it looks like Mesa's is not going to pass as of the latest results, which is significant because Mesa typically passes everything. A more conservative community, you have to really make a pitch to the voters to make sure that they understand the facts and they answer the question. And perhaps that was a variable that we didn't do good enough. Didn't educate people well enough. Perhaps there was some trust. We've talked about trust with the board and the district and the change and the transition. So I just wanted to list because there's a lot of variables, and it's been my humble experience in my career that it's hard to isolate it always to one thing. However, it looks like that we lost. And we'll receive a better breakdown of these votes in the next couple of weeks as far as precinct demographics, precinct breakdown, demographic breakdowns, that this data helps educate us as we move forward what we need to do better, what we need to change. Because if we follow the same formula, it's likely we expect different results. That's kind of the definition of madness, right? We'll be sending out formal communication to our parents very soon. The staff has had communication to them. The board was BCC'd on that. We're also currently debriefing on the positive and the negatives of this election, looking how to better our outreach and our communication efforts to the voting public, not simply our parents, but to the voters. We'd like to have a study session, just teasing the board, in December as we discuss more about, I call it the road ahead. We need to have some clarity with the road ahead with regards to school number 8, transportation project, deferred maintenance in lieu of failing this bond. And with that being said, I'd like to open it up for any discussion or questions that the board or feedback that the board may have regarding the election or the election results. Nothing to vote on here, simply a discussion item.
Dr. Monroe, it was interesting. I have access to some pretty interesting data through our legislative district and our databases. One of the things that caught my eye is 80% of the votes came in over 55, and Buckeye didn't show up. They didn't have any other measures on the ballot. I don't know if it's a timing thing, but what I saw was our parents didn't go out and vote. So when we bring this up again, we're going to have to make sure that we engage our parents and let them know how critically important it is.
I agree. To us, the numbers look like if our own Liberty parents, number one, were registered to vote, and number two, cast a vote in our favor that we win the election. So obviously we see that didn't happen. So there's gaps that we have to analyze why that didn't happen. I will say I've been told that Buckeye is going out for a very significant bond this next year, and they haven't gone out. The word they use is decades. And then Goodyear hadn't gone out for a bond for quite a long time, I was told. And so the city manager was very nervous about the 3 items and figured maybe they'd pass 1 or 2, and that Parks and Rec might not pass. And lo and behold, all 3 of them passed. So I think there's a lot we need to do with our own parents. There's no doubt about it, just looking at the numbers and then getting out into Goodyear and Buckeye again to better educate people, community groups or chambers or faith-based organizations, nonprofits. We can't simply rely on whether there's a sign on this corner and that corner, because there's a lot of confusion and a lot of rhetoric out there. So I think we learn and we move forward. If anything, having been here a short time, my resolve kind of just gets steeled, and you just want to work harder and smarter to make sure that our parents understand the facts. And the fact of the matter is, in December at the study session, we'll talk about we need to now be a little more creative with funding and transportation, and as class sizes maybe get a little more crowded, and maybe people feel that and understand that a little more. But I'm still convinced we have grants and we have SFB monies, and we can still continue to build our buildings and facilitate, still have a great product for parents. We're just going to have to be a little more creative, and then probably be better on the education and the sell part, especially to our parents.
Yeah, and one of the keys was when I was talking to people is they didn't seem to appreciate the fact or understand that this was for primarily 2 schools because of our growth. And I think once they realize if we don't get on top of this because of the time it takes to build 2 schools, they don't want 40 children in a classroom. So that was kind of one of the keys I kind of got at it real quick, is some messaging that we could probably do a little better on.
Yeah, and I would say to that, Member Parks, it's been my experience, a lot of times when a bond does pass, people expect to see, hey, are you breaking ground tomorrow?
Yeah,
They
right.
don't have an understanding that it's, 5 or 6 years. And then I think another thing, excuse me,
members of the audience. Sir? Hold on. Sir, we need you to be quiet. We're conducting business.
Thank you. The other thing I would say is, shoot, I lost my train of thought, and it was brilliant. The other thing I think that we can do better, again, I have a lot of learnings. I'm kind of a man in the mirror type thing, look in the mirror and see what could I do better, is really tie, if I'm a parent at West Star, if I'm a parent at Blue, what's in it for me? What am I going to see, even though I have a newer school? And I think as a staff, a lot of that was lost on the transition and on me, and I think we could probably do that better. If I'm a Liberty parent, what's in it for me to vote for this outside of school buses? My school was just renovated. What am I going to see? And a lot of times people don't understand that the bond is going to last us for quite a few years. So I think that's a personal learning for me, something we could do better.
Thank you. I had a little bit different take. I don't think that it helped this bond that the Arizona State Republican Party put on Twitter to vote no on all bonds and overrides. I think that may have had something to do with it a little bit too, being us in a conservative district that we are. But also I think another thing that didn't help was that we never actually trimmed the fat off the hog when we went out. That the consultant told us we needed $97 million, and we never even looked to see if we actually needed everything or if those were wants, because previous consultants had advised us that when you go out for a bond, you've got your hand out and you're asking the public that these are the things that we want, or I'm sorry, these are the things that we need and not the things that we want, and that they have a tendency to react a little bit different. But that was just my take.
Listen, Member Aguirre, I don't disagree with you. I think, again, the board called the bond. I was hired as the interim. I'm already kind of behind the 8 ball, but I think that's something I could have brought to the board to really, look at what exactly are we asking for, be really specific, and that's a new learning. And then anytime there's any type of, when you engage the voters, we're not even that important. I mean, the Goodyear ballot measures were probably more important to people and voters over 55. If I'm on a fixed income, you better have a very good reason why I need to vote for public education when I just passed an override for you last year. And again, I think that's something moving forward that we'll have to do a better job. And any blanket statements like that, I think those things can hurt us, absolutely, especially when people don't know the facts and they don't understand the why.
Any further discussion?
Well, I'm not sure this is the time to ask this, but we were pretty tight time-wise if we'd passed this bond to get the school up and running before our numbers exceeded our capacity. We're now 6 months at least behind that. I'm assuming we're going to have to sit down and figure out what we're going to do for the interim while we have to put those children somewhere until we get a building up.
Yes, Member Bixler, Bob, Beth, and I, we were just talking about that, kind of our plan B, and getting a direction from the board. I've seen schools built in a year. I've seen phase builds, and we do have 23 million, I believe, from SFB. So in my mind right now, I'm very fixed on still being able to open that school. We have some land negotiations that are still occurring, but opening that school 25 in August. Will it be a full K-8? Will it be phased? And so Bob actually did some timelining, and we'd like to talk to the board a little bit about it. So I still think it's definitely in the realm of possibility, and that's where my mind is. And again, maybe it's a phased build, but that's why I want to see some clarity with the road ahead, because now our pie of money is a lot more limited, and we do have some. But what are we going to do with that money? What type of school are we going to be able to build? But I still think we could make that date, but we just have to do some moving and shaking. And so I think when we have that study session there'll be a lot of things on the table to kind of get an indication from the board. As we got a phase 2 of transportation that we kind of learned about. We've got an elementary school, then we have deferred maintenance. We have schools like Estrella that need maintenance that are 25, 30 years old. So,
Dr. Monroe, I would caution the board, this is a discussion on capital bond election results. It's not really looking too much forward. So I think we need to agendize that for the future. I do agree with board member.
You're good.
Bixler,
You're good.
Right. No, I think it's okay to surface it as a question for agenda purposes. And
thank you. No, that's I apologize.
Let's just keep it on track so we're not in trouble. Okay. I can certainly appreciate comments on all sides that was said. The one thing that I think speaks volumes to our election, regardless of what the state Republican Party did, the local LD 23 outwardly supported the bond and wrote a letter from the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. We had bipartisan support on this, so I thank both parties for their support. I think it is fantastic that we had that from both sides. So the state party doesn't have the influence over the locals that the LDs have. Anybody that's involved in politics at all knows the local LDs are where the work gets done. So with that, we had, we did have support. It's always going to be hard with some makeups and political makeups, to your point, retirement communities. Hard pressed when Goodyear hasn't been out for a bond in a long time, and they come out with 3 of them that are, all very needed as well. So I appreciate everybody that worked on the bond. I appreciate everybody that voted yes for the bond. And even if you voted no, but you voted, I appreciate you, because turnout was dismal, and we can do a lot more with more involvement.
Yeah, President Todd, let me just interrupt and say one more thing before we move on. I would be remiss if I didn't say I appreciate all the people that supported, people in this room, people that advocated, people that had hard conversations. So I would be remiss. I'm really proud of the community effort. We can certainly do better, but we definitely have a lot of supporters. And so thank you. I appreciate the board. A board supporting a bond 5-0 is something that's very significant. And obviously there's a lot of different variables, but I appreciate the support of the board. I know a few of you were out there at meetings and advocating and getting information from me to pass on and things like that. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who helped support the effort.
That'd be great. Members, I believe done. We'll move to 8.4. But before we do that, can I request that we take about a 5-minute break? We've got a few more topics, but if we just keep it right at 5 minutes, I would greatly appreciate that.
Mr. President, make a motion to adjourn for 5 minutes.
Maybe it should be recess.
Recess for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I call your name. Specify your vote. Board Member Parks.
Aye.
Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
It'd be really strange if I voted no, but I'm going to vote yes. We'll show us recess for about 5 minutes. We'll be back as soon as everybody gets a break. Okay, the time is now 8:10 p.m. We'll show that we are back in session with all 5 board members present. We'll move on to item 8.4, approval of second readings of policy BCB, BDA, BDB, BE, BEDA, BEDB, EBC, IHA, JFABDA, JK, JKD, JKE, and JLH. Dr. Monroe.
President Todd, members of the board, the policy this is the second reading of these policies. These were brought to the board on October 30th for first reading. The proposed recommendations for changes were brought to the board for any type of discussion or questions. There was an amendment or a revision made to JK student discipline for the second reading to align better with statute. And these are all ASBA recommended policies because of legal changes or statutes. So it's recommended that the governing board approve the second reading of policies. Here we go. BCB, BDA, BDB, BE, BEDA, BEDB, EBC, IHA, JFA, BDA, JK, JKD, JKE, and JLH.
I just had a question about one of them.
Go ahead.
BDB, board officers. So it's been stated that the board president has powers that may not be listed in policy, and that's statutorily protected. I'm glad that legal counsel's here. Do you know any statutes that we might need to reference within policy to better reflect what our policy says about the powers of the president?
The only statutes that you could reference, if you chose to, would be those that create the position of board president. And I can't give that to you off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up, see what that particular statute is.
Because the way I read it, this BDB, just for transparency, board officers is the way I read it. And even with the addition of vice president, that the board president actually doesn't have any more power than any one board member, with the exception of approving the agenda.
And presiding at the meeting.
He also has the authority to hire legal firms. I could name off a few.
That's what I'm asking, right? That because I hear that, but when I read this, it doesn't say that. But also, that's why I'm wondering: do we need to reference statute that clearly spells out, as an example, what Mr. Parks was just describing?
You know, I would have to look back at 15 you have a reference, I believe, of 15-321. I don't know the scope of that. I can look it up for you if it matters.
Yeah, it says 404, page not found.
You can look it up by the statute.
It's 15 what?
I can pull the statute up if you want.
It's ARS 15-321, and yeah, my link is not working either. Oh, it.
My link is, but it's on the clean.
Oops. Chat.
The phone is slow, so bear with me.
While you're looking that up, does it behoove us to say a policy that the president shall act within the legislative regulation of Arizona revised statutes? That blankets it.
I think the president already has whatever powers are conferred by statute. Policy cannot add to those or detract from them. Policy is just to implement what the statute says. So to the extent that you have statutory powers that are not on this list, the list doesn't take them away.
If I might add, we're given legislative authority based on those statutes, and policies are created out of those statutes, but the president or a board member is not allowed to work outside of those statutes.
I agree.
They're the
That's right.
primary key to what we do here.
More than primary, but the point's correct.
Yes.
So that's why I'm asking these questions, because even now there seems to be confusion, because pulling up 15.321, organization, election officers of the board. Sorry, I apologize. Can everyone hear me now? Election of officers of the board, meeting, execution of warrants, exemption. I'm reading in here and I don't see where it says that the board can hire legal counsel. Now, what I do agree with is that the board as a collective body gives the authority, the formal authority via a vote in a board meeting for the president to perform other duties, but it's the board as a whole has to give that authority. The president can't just do that all by themselves. Correct?
I would agree with that.
Thank you.
So where this gets dangerous, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking for you, is there's a number of statutes that give the parameters of what board members and presidents can do. So I'll give you an example. There's a statute that's very clear, and our policy supports that has to do with the fact that there's only two people that have the authority to deal with council. So by default, that's the president and the superintendent. So that gives the authority and the power to the president.
Well, may I respond?
Yeah.
My understanding of statute relative to consultation with council is, in fact, there are two people, the superintendent and the board president, who have the right to confer with council based on statute. You could expand that if you chose to.
But that doesn't, that's what I'm saying of how confusing this is, because when I read BDB, it's really simple for me of what exactly it says. Is it, to me, in simple language, to me what it says is no board member has any more power than another board member when it comes to voting. Now, we got to have someone lead a meeting. We got to have someone put together an agenda, which I agree with. But in the context, I think that where folks get confused with this particular policy of that they hear the word president and they immediately reference everything that they've heard throughout their lives of what president actually means.
Okay.
Right? Rather than maybe, you understand what I'm getting at.
I see your point.
Yep. So that's why I wonder, I mean, I'm just looking at the policy for what it states, and I just wonder, there's been confusion, like Mr. Parks has stated, as to what the powers of the president actually are.
Well,
So I think in BDG, it references ARS 11. It says, the superintendent and the president of the board shall be designated as the representatives of the district who may confer with council. The district will not be responsible for fees that accrue because an unauthorized individual board member or staff consultation with private counsel. It's a legal reference of ARS 11-532, 15-341, 15-343, and 38-431.07.
Is there a question for me?
I think that's where the specification comes that the board president
No, so
can confer with legal counsel.
I agree with that. I agree with that. The board president and the superintendent are the ones who confer with council, and it's, for me, it's pretty obvious as to why, right?
So then are you suggesting we
But
just include these
what I'm
ARS?
asking is it, to what Mr. Park said, is it actually the board president, from what he understands, actually has the power to go out and hire
I may have
legal counsel?
You may have
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, you may have misinterpreted what I was saying, and I apologize. He can each board member, by the way, by our own, what we're doing, can talk to any counsel we want and bring it before the board, but the board has to vote to hire a law firm. We do that collectively, but there are certain powers given to the president to confer and to have that dialogue. That's where I was going with that, and I apologize if I misspoke.
Does that clarify, or do you want me to?
Oh, no,
if you had a
for
further
me,
question
I just want to make sure that the public and that staff understands that just really how simplistic BDB actually is. That's
Okay.
all. That's all I was bringing up. Is just
Fair enough.
Actually, one other question I do have on these policies, because I was reading through some of them, and some of them obviously they have to change because of new statutes and things of that nature. What happens if we break from these policies as a board? Like we don't follow our own policies?
So what happens?
Yeah, like what can happen to us or the district?
It depends on what the policy is.
Uh-huh.
So are we within our agenda
we're
topic here
talking
for
about-
Well, that's a
approval?
good point. I think
The extension would go to this of, I'm just curious, what happens if, say, we don't follow policy BDB?
I believe that would be a separate discussion that does not fall under approval of second reading, and we can agendize that to get legal opinion, but I don't think that falls under this category of approving these.
So I appreciate that, Mr. President, but I'd also like to confer that I sent out an email to Dr. Monroe about a booklet that talks about actual open meeting law and things of that nature, and that Peoria had a ruling that says that this is something that you're not breaking open meeting law by fully vetting out the discussion of it.
I understand.
And I
but
think
you're-
that that's all I'm trying to do is just vet out the full discussion of on BDB.
that sounds bad.
Right? Of that particular policy, what would happen if the board doesn't follow it? Like if we break that policy?
President, board member, I think you're probably straying from the agenda on
Okay.
that question. And I would recommend to you that you do agendize it, and I'd be happy to answer the question once it's properly before you.
Okay.
It's not a hard one to answer.
We
But
just
I
can't
don't
answer
think
it
it's
right
on the
now.
agenda, so I would
Okay.
recommend to you that you defer it.
Okay. Because I'm just curious, and I appreciate what you're telling me, but the agency handbook.
Yes, I'm well aware of it.
Yep. So I believe it's, don't quote me on this, I believe it's 7.7.6,
Okay?
right?
I don't
That's
have
where it actually
memorized.
talks
I'm very
about that you're
familiar
not.
with the handbook, but I don't have it memorized.
No, right. And that's where it
Again, I
talks-
would caution that we have legal advice to stop this conversation, to stick to the agenda on hand. We'll agendize it and move forward. There's no
Okay.
more discussion further from straying off of this approval. Thank you.
Any further questions for me?
No.
May I sit down, Mr. President?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I would
Mr.
ask staff
President-
that we get that on the agenda for future
Mr. President, I'll
discussion.
make a motion to approve the second reading of policy BCB, BDA, BDB, BE, BEDA, BEDB, EBC, IHA, JFA, BDA, JK, JKD, JKE, and JLH.
Can you repeat that, please? I'm only kidding.
I will second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I call your name. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. When I call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks.
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also, I will show that. Approve 5 yes, 0 no. Item 8.5, discussion of 60-day review of 6-8 English Language Arts primary instructional resources. Ms. Camp.
Mr. President, board members, I am happy to report that we just continue to meet as curriculum committees. So currently, our district board adopted primary instructional resource for 6-8 English Language Arts, which is Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Collections, is a resource that the district has been utilizing for teacher support and classroom instruction for 7 years. This last year, that resource will no longer be available because the company has determined to phase it out and replace it with another resource. Therefore, a new 6-8 ELA resource is needed beginning school year 24-25. A timeline has been established to ensure that the new resources are available for implementation by August of 24, school starting. District administration has been facilitating the 6-8 ELA Primary Instructional Resource Adoption Committee. So far, the committee has met 3 times, October 11th, October 25th, and November 1st. Next, a 60-day review will be initiated to gather public input on each of the following resources: McGraw-Hill's Study Sync and Savvis My Perspectives, beginning November 14th. During this time, teachers on the committee will begin to pilot those resources and make a recommendation. I anticipate bringing something back to you all in April of 2024. All of the 6th through 8th grade ELA primary instructional resource meetings were open to the public. Committee members included teachers, administrators, and parent participants. The purpose of those meetings was to recommend a resource that will support and enrich the curriculum, taking into consideration the varied interests, abilities, learning styles, and maturity levels of students served. You can also read B and C there, which are in our policy. The committee meeting agendas and meeting documents were posted using board docs. Committee members previewed materials and scored each resource using a rubric of criteria for the 6th through 8th grade ELA instructional resources. During these meetings, committee members discussed the merits and or possible concerns with each resource. Each of the resources listed, as mentioned before, McGraw-Hill Study Sync and Savvis My Perspectives, were recommended based on a consensus of the committee that reviewed the resource. The minutes of each meeting and the video recordings of each meeting were posted on board docs. This is for your information only.
Board members, any questions? I just have one if nobody else does. We've been using this for several years, but is that 3 years or 10 years? Any idea?
2016, I believe, is when it was adopted, but I can get you that exact date.
That's good enough. My follow-up question to that is, as we look at this new material, do we specify anything that the publisher has to keep it available for a certain amount of years? I would hate to purchase something and have them canceled the following year. So I think we should require that in our RFP to them. When we bid that, we need to have some assurance. We could spend a lot of money on the program and have it end the next year. We don't want to do that. Unless somebody thinks that's a
Ms.
bad
Camp,
idea.
do we not get a list of state-approved vendors to select from? So most of that vetting has been done, right?
Yes, we do. And we also can research outside of state approved as well.
Just mostly worried that they don't cancel it the year we buy it, and then we're stuck doing it all over. Okay, any further questions, discussion? All right, move to item 8.6, discussion consideration to approve the school calendar for school year 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27. Dr. Mahorn.
Mr. President, Governing Board, as you're aware, the original 4-day calendar was created and implemented this current year with the input of parents and the ongoing evaluation by the recent 4-day monitoring group, which also includes parents. In addition, the proposed calendars for the next 3 school years have been reviewed by several additional groups, including Cabinet, Human Resources, Educational Services, building administrators, and the teacher advisory group. These calendars also align with the Buckeye Union High School District. Just some things to note, the upcoming calendars meet the statutory requirements for the instructional minutes for all grade levels. The upcoming calendars will do continue with the 4-day school week that was recently started. The upcoming calendars reflect Thanksgiving recess starting on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That was a change that was just, from my understanding, implemented just this year on the 4-day calendar. In the past, that has not been a working day or a school day for anyone. Teachers will have one additional day for the beginning of the year preparation. It's best practice to have 3 years of school calendars created and published on the district website. However, the governing board reserves the right to make changes and updates as appropriate at any time.
Members, any questions?
Just a comment, I want to say thank you to everybody who looked at this. There's a lot of families in our district that, need that planning time, so, and obviously a lot of families that have kids in multiple districts, my kids. I got a kid in Buckeye High School and kids here, so making those mesh, I greatly appreciate, so thank you everybody who was involved.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, let me get there, to approve the school calendar for school year 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Kenyon, a second by Board Member Parks. When I call your name, I'm sorry, Board Member Bixler, my apologies. When I call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks?
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre?
Yes.
Board Member Bixler?
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 5 yes, 0 no. Okay, next up will be item 8.7, discussion consideration to approve special education preschool itinerant teacher job description. Dr. Mahorn.
Mr. President, again, and governing board, it is the district administration recommends approval of the special education preschool itinerant teacher job description. The job description includes responsibilities and duties specific to this position. Something to note, when you listened to Kay's presentation earlier, she talked about where the money would come to pay for this, and it is through the $80,000 DES grant that, from my understanding, is almost a guarantee as long as you do ABC. It is a continuing grant for this position. And remember, itinerant means they do not have a class themselves. They are pushing in, just like Kay talked about in that presentation, and supporting students that way.
Members, we can take a motion and then have discussion.
Just a quick discussion. As I looked over the job description on the itinerant, the very first page, item number 10, it talks about diagnosis. Do our teachers diagnose?
No, but they interpret.
Pardon me?
They interpret. They don't diagnose, but they interpret.
Interpret data that's collected, correct? Is that correct?
Would it be better to say that as opposed to diagnose, which is what's on the,
I mean, that's, we
It's
could
item
change that.
number 10. Instead of diagnosis, Ms. Hamrick is also concurring that we could say interprets the learning disabilities of students on a regular basis, seeking the assistance of district specialists as required.
So President Todd, if there's a motion made, maybe that's the language
We would
put
need to
in the
make that
motion.
language change.
yeah, I'll do that.
Oh.
I move that we change the language of the text of the job profile for the itinerant teacher. Item number 10, change the word from
Wait, I'm sorry, Mr. Bixler, or Ms. Bixler. It's discussion and consideration to approve, so you would have to approve that position with the change of that.
All right, let's do it this way then. Mr. President, I move that we approve the position of itinerant teacher with the change in text from item number 10 to change the word diagnosis to interpret.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second is done by Bixler and Parks. Any further discussion? I would just like to clarify from our educational experts, and I know Board Member Bixler served in this role as well, but our staff is comfortable with that language change. We think you're good? Okay. Ms. Hamrick is shaking her head in the back. Everybody else is shaking their head. We're good. So with that, we'll call for a vote. Board Member Parks?
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre?
Yes.
Board Member Bixler?
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon?
Aye.
I'm also an aye. Will show that approved 5 yes, 0 no. Okay, next up is item number 8.8, discussion consideration to approve Medicaid billing technician job description. Dr. Mahorn.
Mr. President, again, and governing board, district administration recommends approval of the Medicaid billing technician job description. The job description includes responsibilities and duties specific to this position. This is a new position. It is a half-time position. The reason for this, as again, referring to the presentation, is we are growing as preschool especially, and we are growing our special education students, and there are lots of monies that can be collected. We just have to bill correctly. Right now, because of the such fast growth, we have a few different people that are doing part of this. This will allow one person to focus on the billing and make sure that we are collecting the monies that we're able to bill for. And so this position will pay for itself. We will be able to pay for the position out of the monies collected, which will be super helpful.
Okay, any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a statement. I had no idea what Medicaid would cover. And in the description, you talk about the different things that we may not be currently receiving the funding for.
Exactly.
And I had no idea, so thank you for bringing that to our attention.
There's lots of different things.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the Medicaid billing technician job description.
Have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion, a second. Any further discussion? Otherwise, we'll go for a vote. Hearing none. Board Member Parks.
Yes.
Board Member Aguirre.
Yes.
Board Member Bixler.
Aye.
Board Member Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We'll show that approved. 5 yes, 0 no. Okay, next up, item 9.1, board comments or agenda topics.
Mr. President, I'd like to put an agenda item together to put together a board committee, includes parents and teachers, to go over the discipline policy.
Okay, sounds good.
So I'd like to get on the agenda, what happens when the board doesn't follow its own policy, and then also a discussion on the agency handbook, and specifically the leniency that is allotted to school boards with open meeting law.
Okay.
I'd also like to add the planning for our population growth and how we'll accommodate their needs prior to the building of a school.
Is that kind of where you were at before about the failed bond and our plan?
When I
moving
was
forward?
off topic, yeah.
Yep, okay, perfect. I didn't want to say that. You were bringing up a very valid point. Just wanted to keep us out of trouble. Okay, that's good. Members, earlier there was a question, legal says we can address it here, about anonymous. I'd point the board to policy BHD that says official communication between the board and the community is subject to the following. A, any community member who exhausts the opportunity or discussing a matter at the administrative level may communicate with the board in writing. No anonymous communication will be considered by the board. I have no further comments. With that, we will move to item 10.1. Got a couple meetings coming up. November 27th, have a work session with the School Board Association from 4:30 to 6:30. The board meeting will follow after that. December 4th, same thing, follow-up work session with School Board Association, 4:30 to 6:30. That is on a non-board meeting day. It is a Monday, however. December 11th, 4:30 to 5:30 is a study session with a regular board member to follow. January 8th, 2024, a regular board meeting. January 29th, 2024, regular board meeting. February 12th, 2024, regular board meeting. February 26th, 2024, regular board meeting. And I believe we might need to do an organizational meeting in there as well. We have to reference policy. Okay, we'll do that on January 8th. Okay.
January 8th, yes.
So I believe that needs to be agendized separately as well. So we'll do that. All right, members, it's now everybody's favorite part of the meeting, the adjournment. I will take a motion.
Mr. President, I move we adjourn.
Second?
Adjournment by Bixler, a second by Parks. I call your name, please specify your vote. Board Member Parks.
Yes.
McGuire.
Yes.
Bixler.
Aye.
Kenyon.
Aye.
I'm also an aye. We will show that approve 5 yes, a 0 no, and the meeting is adjourned.